I'd like to talk about who we're running against. A billionaire who calls women fat broads and horse-faced lesbians.
Correct. That's correct.
Big problems become big problems when you let small problems sit.
Everybody, how's it going? We're ready. Yeah, camera's working today.
Hold on.
There we go. There we go.
God, is that good?
I'm sure there's tons of people out there like, man, I just love it. My favorite part of the Ben Joravsky, yeah, news, whatever. I love it when Ben drinks that water.
Tell you what, man. Sometimes water, The little water fountain. Little tip here. If you ever come here, go to the little water fountain.
All right, how about that debate last night, huh?
Oh, man, come on.
Whoa.
I'm ready to talk about it.
Man, for once, an entertaining one.
Hey.
They were pretty boring last few times.
Come on. You're starting to sound like some of the people. I don't watch debates. Remember those people, huh?
Well, all right, here we go. Your Ben Joravsky Show for Thursday, February 20th. It's just moments away. But before we get into that, we got to thank the following unions for jumping on board and sponsoring this program. Unions like the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 and District 8. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9 are sponsors, as well as the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Hey, thanks, unions. And, of course, today's Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Benny J., we need a song of the day, sir.
Well, in honor of a certain guest that will be in this building today, but not probably on our show, unless I'm stunned. I'm going to sing the greatest hits. I'm going to do a medley, D. Greatest hits of the Eagles. Desperado, why don't you come to your senses? That's one.
J.B. Pritzker's in the Sun-Times building today.
And what's the one they do in the Big Lebowski? And then Jeff Bridges' character, Big Lebowski, gets so mad. Could you not play the Eagles? I hate the beep in the Eagles. And the cab driver throws them out. One of the greatest scenes in take it easy. Anyway, that's about it for me in the... Oh! What's the other one? Tequila Sunrise. Anyway, that's my Eagles medley in honor of J.B. Pritzker. He loves the Eagles, ladies and
he's in
gentlemen.
the Sun-Times building. Probably not coming to our studio, but we're right by the bathroom. So he may be walking in the bathrooms and he just hears a...
I'm not a perfect person.
Where'd that come from?
By the way, if he does head in our direction, JB, this is a little advice. If you're in the Sun-Times, you're heading by the bathrooms, check out the water fountain. Smaller water fountain, all right? Don't go to the big one. Smaller water fountain.
Oh, yeah, you don't think this guy's just got bottled water?
There's a good possibility that's the case. Oh, well, forget everything I said, JB.
All right, the Ben Joravsky Show starts now. It is Thursday, February 20th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, In These Times writer Branko Marcetic will join us. Not Miles Kampflass and Branko Marcetic. Union man Don Villar makes his long-awaited return, and we welcome Denika McMillen. And now your host, he loves the Sun-Times water fountain. Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Smokin' Joe Thursday. And here's why. I got so much on my mind, D. I don't know where to start. Let's start with number one. J.B. Pritzker's in the building. Governor Pritzker's in the building. Yes, indeed. We said this already. I'll be coming by the Sun-Times for an editorial board meeting where he's going to promote his budget. Now, he's probably not going to stop by here, but just in case, D, how many times am I going to tell you, take those pizza cartons and remove them?
Oh, my goodness. Sorry.
Okay? Got a governor in the building. And that bong. Get rid of the... Well,
One more hit.
Wait, it's legal now. So keep the bong. Okay. Although I think that bud you got there is not from one of the dispensaries, if I'm correct on that one, young man. Anyway, I bumped into Tom McNamee, the editor of the editorial board, one of the editors.
Tommy Mac.
Tommy Mac. It's always a blast talking to politics with young Tom McNamee, the pride and joy of Bogan High School on the Southwest Side. He is one of the chief editorial writers for the Chicago Sun-Times. He was at the bagel store. I was dutifully buying bagels for Dennis and myself, and I bumped him and we were talking. We got a great conversation about the issue is it right for someone to be a billionaire? And that was a topic that was raised in last night's debate. Get into that later. And Tom McNamee had some very interesting thoughts. He said no. And we're going to bring him on to have this as a larger discussion. And this is Tom just speaking as Tom, not representing anybody at the Chicago Sun-Times. It's just Tom speaking as Tom. Very fascinating insights on the inequity of allowing someone like Michael Bloomberg to accumulate so much money. Got to say, McNamee kind of had me thinking, blew my mind a little bit. So good job, Tom McNamee. We're going to bring you on to take a deeper dive in that. And then, of course, come on. Got to talk about last night's debate. And as I was telling Dee, we have a lot of fun. We've watched every single debate, or I've watched every. In fact, Dennis, let's give him a hand, folks. He has watched every single debate. We have some of our guests who come in and they're like, I don't watch debates.
Oh, is that an impression of anyone in particular? Sounds a little like McDunkey. Just saying.
I'm too important. I have things to watch. I don't watch debates until... at the end. They don't watch the debate until it's like, two people in the debate, and then it's worth their while to watch it. But anyway, we've been watching the debates, and here's the thing about watching the debates. You get to see, you get to watch as the candidates develop their debating skills. They get a little tougher, a little smarter, a little sharper. They learn the tricks of getting their message out. And those who have not participated in the debates, well, they don't know how the game is played, and that leads me to a certain gazillionaire from New York City named Michael Bloomberg. Michael, I'm going to tell you something that your hanger-ons will not tell you. You got your butt whooped last night at that debate.
That's correct.
I mean, God dang. Whoa. Started with Elizabeth Warren. I said, Smokin' Joe. I'm going to have to help millennial listeners out here, D. Smokin' Joe Frazier, one of the greatest heavyweight champs. Love you, Smokin' Joe from the 70s. Pride and joy of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. They should have a statue for Joe Frazier on City Hall steps, not Rocky. Anyway, I'm going to move on from that. I know the things I get upset about.
I'm just laughing at everybody making fun of your singing on the live stream.
It was a medley, okay, in honor of Pritzker. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yes. Elizabeth Warren. Folks, if you saw that debate, she came out. You got that bit, D, to play it? No? All right.
Oh, what, from last night?
Yeah.
Hey, come on. Why are you assuming I don't?
I'd like to talk about who we're running against. A billionaire who calls women fat broads and horse-faced lesbians. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Mayor Bloomberg. Democrats are not going to win if we have a nominee who has a history of hiding his tax returns, of harassing women, and of supporting racist policies like redlining and stop and frisk. Look, I'll support whoever the Democratic nominee is, but understand this. Democrats take a huge risk if we just substitute one arrogant billionaire for another. This country has worked for the rich for a long time and left everyone else in the dirt. It is time to have a president who will be on the side of
deserves
working
it.
families and be willing to get out there and fight for them. That is why I am in this race, and that is how I will beat Donald Trump.
Senator, we got to wake up.
Whoa!
Bloomberg's
Whoa.
looking, oh, that dirty.
Whoa! No, I know. All this time, my rankings has always been Bernie 1, Elizabeth. I gotta say, after last night, Elizabeth Warren is coming strong after you, Bernie.
You're so easy.
Oh, that was a first-class butt whoop last night.
It was.
You know who the happiest man in the city of Chicago is? Brandon Johnson. Brandon Johnson, Commissioner, Cook County Commissioner from the West Side, was at the hideout debating Carlos Ramirez Rosa. He was representing Elizabeth. Carlos was representing Bernie. Carlos was coming strong. But last night, Elizabeth Warren showed why she's in the race. And I'll tell you something. What was Bloomberg's response? Here's Bloomberg's response. I will now imitate it. Habada, habada, habada.
That's correct.
Poor Bloomberg. Habada, habada, habada. You gotta look. Here's the problem, Mike. I'm gonna just say it to you, okay? Because you pay all these guys. They tell you what you want to hear. They tell you what a great guy you are, how wonderful you are. The reality is,
By the way, if you pay me, I'll tell you you're great.
hey, by the way, yeah, it's not like I'm against that, okay? Well, I could pay me $1 million. $1 million is nothing to this guy, D. $1 million is the equivalent of the tip I gave the people at the bagel counter today. Here. Give Dennis $1 million to shut the other guy up.
Oh, give me $1 million. I will not be here tomorrow.
That is not true.
Ben who?
You'll be able to hire other people to have the show even expand with that $1 million. Anyway, Michael Bloomberg looks stunned. He's not used to people talking to him this way. He's a gazillionaire.
Well, I've never.
And I also think that Michael Bloomberg suffers from a little disease that I like to call Rom-itis. And what is Rom-itis? It's named for our former mayor here in the city of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel. It's like, I'm smart and you're not. And
Take a chill pill, man.
I knew you were going to play it. And yes, just like Rahm, Bloomberg thinks he's the smartest guy in the room, and he clearly is not. And Elizabeth Warren showed that last night. And she gave him a beatdown. And, it's funny. My friends of the centrist persuasion, they always are giving me grief about Bernie. They're always telling me that there's no way Bernie can win. They tell me that.
Hey, Monroe Anderson.
There's many more besides Monroe. Trust me when I tell you that. They're always telling me that Donald Trump will be airing commercials blasting Bernie as a socialist. They'll link those commercials will link socialism to communism, and somehow or other he will be magically transformed into Fidel Castro, which is sort of Chris Matthews' position on the whole matter. And Bloomberg tried that last night at the debate. D. I don't know if you caught that, where he essentially called Bernie Sanders a communist. He's taken a page from the Chris Matthews.
Yeah, Chris
playbook.
Matthews like, yeah, my guy.
Finally, someone has
Denmark.
And by the way, Bloomberg's probably his best counterpunch of the night was when he came strong at Bernie about being a socialist who's a millionaire and has 3 homes. Did you hear that one, D? And yeah, because Bernie owns 3 homes. He's got one in Washington, where, because he's a senator, he's there all the time. He's got one in Vermont, and then he's got a vacation home. All right. So then Bernie came out. I have 3 homes. I'll tell you what they are. And so I know that if Bernie Sanders is the nominee of the Democratic Party, that Donald Trump will be hitting him hard, picking up that theme. Absolutely. You know it. He's going to try to present Bernie as a hypocrite because he's a millionaire, accumulated a lot of money from the sales of his books, and he owns 3 homes. So we know that's coming, all right? But we also know, based on that opening salvo from Elizabeth Warren, what to expect on Donald Trump commercials regarding Michael Bloomberg. It's not like he's impervious to it all, folks. He's got a lot of baggage he's bringing you centrists out there who love Michael Bloomberg. I'm just trying to tell you, it works 2 ways. Centrists are always telling me, Ben, wait till we get to the general election. Your boy Bernie won't be able to withstand the pounding that'll come from Trump's commercials. Oh, yeah? Well, what about your guy? What about Bloomy? Huh? He's going to get crushed by those commercials from Donald Trump. So this is my counterpoint to the centrists who love Michael Bloomberg. And it really goes both ways. It goes for every single candidate on that stage. As we saw last night, when the Democrats took off their gloves and went after each other strong, They expose the weaknesses of each candidate. And you can expect that Donald Trump's campaign will pound away at those weaknesses. You cannot live in fear of what Donald Trump's campaign is going to do to your candidate. If he's your candidate, if you believe that this person represents your worldview the best, if you believe that this person is best equipped to beat Donald Trump or a combination of their both, then you should vote for him. You shouldn't live in fear of what Donald Trump will do in the campaign, because what he can do to Bernie, he can do to Bloomberg, he can do to absolutely everybody who was on that stage. I'm going to make a prediction, D. Whenever the next debate is, and I don't have the schedule in front of me, I predict that Bloomberg will come back more prepared and better. I cannot believe this guy's gotten through life so ill-equipped to defend himself from assault in a debate. I got to think he's smarter on his feet than that. I got to think he can come back with a counterpunch. And he's got all these strategists getting hundreds of thousands of dollars from him. They got to come up with something resembling a strategy. I have to believe that Michael Bloomberg will do better in the next debate. If he doesn't, centrist. You might want to go back to Joe Biden. We got a great show today, everybody. Yes, indeed. Branko Marcetic will be here. Wait, where's Miles? I know you love Miles on Thursday. Miles is busy. I think he's on the coast, D, hanging out with, like cool people on the coast.
That's the opposite of his typical Thursdays.
Actually, I have no idea where he told me and I forgot, but he has another In These Times writer. Branko was all fired up to talk about the debates, presidential election, lots of national political talk with Branko. Don Villar from the Chicago Federation of Labor here. We're talking Pritzker budget talk. Oh, got a lot of labor news with Don Villar. We're talking some Blago stuff with him. Don was a news writer for many years. We have Mark Brown. Can we give Mark Brown a shout out, D? His column in today's Sun-Times was hilarious about Blago Gate, the Blago show that took place outside of Blago's house yesterday. We'll get into it a little with Don Villar. Great column by Mark Brown. Hey, Sun-Times, give Mark Brown a raise. Take it out of petty cash. Denika McMillen will be in the studio, the Democratic candidate for state rep in the 41st District. That's out in DuPage County. Love when Dems run strong in Republican districts. Love when they flip those Republican districts. So we'll be talking to her how to win in DuPage County. Lots of political talk ahead of us. But before we do any of that, the young man from Alton, the man downstate they call Dr. Doobie, with the news.
No one calls me that. How's it going, everybody? Let's unpack what's happening in Chicago and or Illinois this afternoon. Both our Illinois governor and Chicago mayor were at the UIC campus today. Yeah, man, we begin with the Chicago mayor. Today, Mayor Lori Lightfoot spoke at a UIC forum to deliver welcoming remarks at the city's STEP Summit. STEP is Solutions Toward Ending Poverty. Here's a little bit of that.
Since I began the campaign for this office, I've visited every neighborhood. I've seen everything that makes Chicago strong, but also everything we, as a city, have failed to confront for generations. The roots of poverty and hardship run deep in our city, entrenching residents in seemingly inescapable cycles of joblessness, disinvestment, and ultimately despair and loss of dignity. Now, I'm not going to go through it all now, but I want to make sure that we are starting in the same place with the same set of facts. 1 in every 5 Chicagoans lives in poverty, a level virtually unchanged over the last 20 years. 1 out of every 10 live in extreme poverty, also unchanged in the last 20 years. Put simply, these folks must try to make it on $8.50 a day. Consider how impossible that is.
This is a side of Lori Lightfoot that does not get enough attention. And perhaps because it seems contrasted by some of the stances she's taken on crucial issues like Lincoln Yards, the huge TIF handout on the north side. But I applaud Lori Lightfoot when she talks like this. And this is why I voted for her, D. When she came to the Hideout for the First Tuesday show with Mick Dumke and myself, that's how she talked. And she talked like a very progressive candidate. And the other day she gave a speech. It was sort of lost in the weeds. She gave it on a Friday, and Fran Spielman wrote a good write-up in the Sun-Times that ran Saturday when no one was paying attention to the news cycle, unfortunately, about the need to abolish poverty in the city of Chicago. I can't imagine Mayor Rahm ever making a speech remotely like that, or Mayor Daley. Mayor Rahm and Mayor Daley were dedicated to the proposition that the best thing for the city of Chicago was not to help people who are really poor, but to move them out of Chicago. That was like their chief goal. They never came out and said it. Of course they wouldn't say it. They're too politically correct to say it, but that's what their planning department was doing by massively subsidizing what? The gentrification of neighborhoods all around the city, all around the loop, in and out of the downtown area, making it more expensive to live in Chicago. So Lori Lightfoot, I want to see where she goes with this, like what specificity she has this. But I do like the fact that she's willing to stand up and speak out for people who are really living on the edge. This teasingly, Michael Bloomberg and my centrist friends, Bloomberg has a wretched record, folks, on this issue, the issue of affordability, the issue of a minimum wage. He's opposed these things in the past, and he's used his bully pulpit to undercut them. And that's too much of the Democratic Party plays that game. They feel as though, well, to win re-election, we have to appeal to people who have just sort of disdainful attitude toward the poor, and an attitude that wealthy people have the money they have because somehow or other they're better than everybody else. This is what Tom McNamee and I were getting at in our little conversation at the bagel shop. And so when I hear Lori Lightfoot going in a different direction and talking about society's need to help people who are most exposed, I have to applaud her. This is what Democrats are supposed to believe in. These are the values that the Democratic Party are supposed to uphold. So I applaud Lori Lightfoot when she talks this way, D. Just want to see the follow-through.
All right. In the afternoon, Lightfoot will participate in a separate conversation about poverty in Chicago. And yes, we're still talking about former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich. President Donald Trump commuted his 14-year prison sentence earlier in the week. He gave a press conference at his home about it on Wednesday. He praised Donald Trump. His chin was bleeding from a razor cut. It was awkward. Mayor Lightfoot took some time to weigh in on Blago's bailout, and it should come as no surprise she's not a fan. The following comes from the Chicago Sun-Times, and Ben, guess who?
Fran Spielman.
You got it, Fran the Woe Man Spielman. Lightfoot has already declared her opposition to President Donald Trump's decision to commute Rod Blagojevich's sentence and free the former governor from federal prison 4 years early. On Wednesday, Lightfoot made what she promised will be her final comments on Blagojevich's release and the former governor's bravado claims of being a, quote, freed political prisoner. It's a subject that clearly annoys her to no end. Here's some of the audio from the mayor's press conference.
But of the things that are going on in the city, the needs that are great, what our residents need, dealing with Rod Blagojevich doesn't even make the list. So I'll say this, and this hopefully will be the last thing that I say. Every week, every month, there are men and women who return from incarceration, particularly from the Illinois Department of Corrections, into the city, many times in worse circumstances than what they left. None of those people are going to get the kind of attention that you're apparently going to pay to Rod Blagojevich, and that's a shame, because many of them have great needs that we are trying to address as a city. But the difference between most of them and Rod Blagojevich is that they accept responsibility for the crimes that they've committed. They are willing to do what's necessary to make amends for the harm that they cause. Some people say, well, don't you have sympathy for his family? I have sympathy for every family, mine included, where you have a loved one who's incarcerated. It does terrible things to the members of the family that are outside. But what I would expect, and we have not seen, is 1 ounce of contrition from this man who held the highest office in our state and used it in a way that is shameful, and that as a consequence of his prosecution and conviction by a jury of his peers, still has no capacity for acceptance of responsibility. So that's the last that I hope I will ever say about Rod.
I agree with her 100% with this little caveat. It's not the last you've heard of Rod Blagojevich, so don't pretend that you're not going to have to speak out about it again. Got to give Justin Horwitz credit one more time. He was on this show on Tuesday. As the news was breaking, he point blank predicted that Rod Blagojevich would become an operative for Donald Trump in the upcoming presidential election. Somehow or other, part of Donald Trump's strategy to win over black voters will be to use Rod Blagojevich as a spokesperson. And Rod Blagojevich, you could tell, he is eager to take on this assignment because, number one, he appreciates Donald John Trump for getting out of federal prison. And number two, he, like Trump, suffers from this grandiose ego to think as though he did nothing wrong and he's an innocent victim of government overreach. It's a worldview that he shares with Donald Trump. And as such, he has now turned himself into a political prisoner. That's what he said. What a freaking joke. To anybody who really is a political prisoner in this country, for anybody who was punished for daring to speak out in a real legitimate way against the inequities we have in this country. Rod Blagojevich did not go to prison because he was speaking out against inequities. Rod Blagojevich did not go to the federal pen. He was not persecuted and prosecuted by federal investigators because he was like Fred Hampton. He was speaking out against racism. He was speaking out against poverty. He was not like Martin Luther King, who gave up his life in part of a greater struggle that was more important than himself. No. Rod Blagojevich went to prison because he was using his power as the governor of this Illinois to shake people down for money. Now, you could say, well, the government overreached. You could say that the government wasn't fair in how they released only certain tapes of Blagojevich's conversation. That's all. You can have that conversation. I'm willing to have that conversation. But let's not pretend that Rod Blagojevich is the second coming of Nelson Mandela. Rod Blagojevich is a con artist. He conned the city of Chicago, the voters of the 5th Congressional District, into electing them a congressman, predicting that somehow or other he would be less corrupt than Danny Rostenkowski, who was the Democrat who held the office before him. He conned the people of the state of Illinois into electing them as their governor, not once, but twice. And he went to federal prison because he was essentially selling off the government to the highest bidder. So let's not feel sorry for Rod Blagojevich as always an innocent victim. But I got to tell you, folks, he's a smooth operator. He's unflappable. He's Trump-like in his ability just to draw media attention and to get people fired up. And he will be a very useful asset for Donald Trump in the coming months. That's all and you know what? You can already see it, man. I love it. The one part about this story I love to death is watching the Chicago Tribune's editorial board duck and dodge on this one, because to them, Rod Blagojevich has been a very useful symbol of Democratic corruption. They use him all the time to try to bash the Democrats and propel people like Bruce Rauner to undercut unions. That's all it's about. It's all anti-union strategy. Come on, folks. You're smarter not to fall for that Chicago Tribune editorial garbage. All right? And so that's what it's all about. Now, all of a sudden, Rod Blagojevich will be part of the same anti-union team headed by Donald Trump. Tribune won't know what to do. They'll all be wearing MAGA hats together. By the way, I'm wearing my MAGA hat today.
That's a Bulls hat, guys. For those who download, he's not wearing a MAGA hat.
So, we
want listeners.
So I'm just taking great delight in watching this unfold. A little disbelief that Trump and Blago feel as though Blagojevich can bring over voters, particularly black voters. I'm going to watch this one unfold. Very interesting. On today's Sun-Times, Rod Blagojevich was liking himself to Dred Scott. Take a deep dive, folks, and read about the Dred Scott case from the 1850s, just before the Civil War. So, look, there's no end to the chutzpah of Rod Blagojevich or Donald Trump. They're linked together. And if you think you've heard the last of Rod Blagojevich, Lori Lightfoot, get ready. You're probably going to have to talk about him for many weeks to come.
Yes, Rod Blagojevich coming soon to a Trump rally near you.
No collusion.
And I can't stress it enough, guys. Not a MAGA hat he's wearing. It's a Bulls hat.
Bulls hat, man. Come on.
Tell your friends about the show.
Stay loyal to the Bulls. Stay loyal to the Bulls.
All right, moving on. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker.
Big problems become big problems when you let small problems sit.
Yes, our governor was at UIC Daily Library to discuss increased investments in higher education in his FY21 budget proposal. I can talk. Later, he'll be at, surprise, surprise, the Thompson Center to speak at Secretary of State Jesse White's Black History Month celebration. now, as suspected, because of all the Blago talk. Our current Illinois governor, whether he likes it or not, has taken the back seat in all of the Illinois headlines this week. And, well, the same can be said for our show as well. The governor gave his 2021 budget address on Wednesday, and we have barely talked about it. That is, until today.
That's correct.
By the way, for what it's worth, Pritzker gave a statement regarding Blogapalooza. Remember, years before becoming governor, and thank God, former Illinois Governor Bruce Rauner, we learned that Pritzker played a minor role in this. Did he not, Ben?
Absolutely.
Anything you'd like to say? Coach everybody up on what he did there?
About Pritzker and Blago?
Yes.
All right. Well, okay. This was one of our favorite topics of 2018 and 2017 because the Rauner campaign thought this was the secret to defeating Pritzker. God, I'm getting all my billionaires mixed up. But anyway.
Don't you hate when that happens?
I know. Back in the day, in about 2008, after Barack Obama was elected president of the United States, there was a process where everybody was trying to figure out who was going to be appointed by Blagojevich to fill that vacancy. And suddenly, lots of different people were reaching out to Blagojevich, asking him, to consider them or to consider their friends. Rahm Emanuel reached out to Blagojevich. Rahm was being offered the job of being chief of staff for Barack Obama, and so Rahm thought, he didn't want to give up his congressional seat. So what he wanted Blagojevich to do was to appoint Forrest Claypool to fill Rahm's vacancy, and then Rahm would, after a year or two in the White House, come back and say, all right, Forrest, beat it, and take the job back. He didn't even realize that Blagojevich didn't have the capability. It's not the government's authority, the governor's authority to fill congressional vacancies. But Pritzker went to Blagojevich as well to talk about appointment. He wanted some kind of appointment, and they were trashing various politicians. It's interesting, Blagojevich was trashing various black politicians in the state of Illinois. Somehow or other, that tape found its way to the Chicago Tribune. It was front page news. Rauner's people were using it joyfully in commercials. They thought, this is the ticket to defeat Pritzker, right? Well, what happened? Donald John Trump cut him off at the knees by talking about how Blagojevich was the innocent victim of government overreach. And he was already thinking about commuting the sentence. Poor Rauner. Because all those MAGA hat wearers in the Republican Party were like, if Donald Trump tells us Blagojevich is a good guy, we believe Blagojevich is a good guy. And so suddenly Rauner lost his campaign issue, to which I said, ha, 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 nah, 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 nah. Because all Rauner was going to do is use it as an attempt to destroy unions in the state of Illinois. So that is the little history of Blago and Pritzker.
Pritzker said of Blago's commute, quote, President Trump has abused his pardon power in inexplicable ways to reward his friends and condone corruption. Pritzker continued, identifying Trump's actions as a pardon instead of a commutation. Quote, and I deeply believe this pardon sends the wrong message at the wrong time.
Well, it's not inexplicable. We all know why he did it. Trump did it because, one, he doesn't believe Blago did anything wrong. Blago is essentially committing extortion. That's what Trump did with the president of Ukraine. So if he lets Blago out of prison for doing the same thing he did, then it's his way of saying, see, I did nothing wrong. And as I said, number two, they both share a hatred for the federal prosecutors who are coming after them. And so now Blago will be a very useful tool. So that's why he did it, JB. And now JB's saying, I'm not going to talk about it. He probably said that too, right? D, is that his thing? Just like Lori, we're not going to talk about this anymore. Like it's going to disappear. We're not going to talk about it anymore. Okay, it's going to disappear. It's like centrists telling me all the time, Ben, don't talk about the mean things that Michael Bloomberg said about women down through the years. Why? Because then Trump will be able to use that. I'm like, you think Trump doesn't know this? He's not going to use it? So if you pretend as though Blago doesn't exist, folks, is that going to mean he doesn't exist? He's not having a rally, a MAGA hat rally for Trump? Come on, folks. It's a real thing. You can't pretend it doesn't exist.
All right, no more Blago talk. Let's finally talk about that budget address, huh?
Oh, come on. I want more Blago talk.
Oh, we're done.
Oh.
And if you were to ask any of your friends or family of the left-leaning persuasion about Governor Pritzker's 2021 budget plans, they describe it with words like promising, hopeful, inspiring. Ben Joravsky, what were your overall thoughts on the budget address?
Promising, hopeful, inspiring.
Wow. Whoa.
No, man. I got to give Pritzker. First of all, let me just say this about budgets. Can I just take a moment to say this about budgets?
Whose name's on that banner right there? Ben Joravsky. Oh, it's you. Dude, your show. Do whatever you want.
Let me just look at that banner. Oh, yeah, I love that banner. All right, let's get back to the budget. Budgets are projections. So, they project whether it's a mayor or a governor or a president, you project that you're going to take in X amount of dollars in taxes and whatever revenues, and then you're going to spend Y amount. And then magically, when you make the budget, you project just enough incoming money to meet all your expenditures, and you call it a balanced budget. You're just making the stuff up, folks. I think in general we should move away. I think the public is so cynical about the budget addresses anyway. Nobody pays attention. There's a reason why people are paying attention to Blago as opposed to the budget, because there's something more, I don't know, real about what Blago's doing. You know what I'm saying? It's about raw exercise of power. Now, the budget is a very important process. Obviously, who gets what and who pays what is a very important aspect of government. But, it's not really like a truthful exercise. A lot of games are being played. And in this particular case, what Pritzker has done essentially is given the people of Illinois a choice. And the choice is this. If you vote for his fair tax initiative in November, Pritzker will spend that money on stuff you like education, et cetera, and so forth. If you don't vote for that fair tax proposal in November, then Pritzker will have no choice but to cut the budget. Now, as a supporter of the fair tax initiative, I'm saying, right on. Good job. But I got a feeling, D, not everybody agrees with me.
Now, unlike Ben Joravsky, our Illinois friends of the conservative persuasion, well, they're nowhere near as optimistic. Doomed. Frightening. And, of course, what kind of hippie crap is this? Our words our Illinois right-wingers have been spouting from the mouth since Wednesday's budget address. And guys, yes, we get it. We're smart and they are not. But we can't just live in liberal land 24/7, okay? We got to know what the other side is saying. So that's why the following comes from the uber right-wing media outlet wirepoints.org.
I get their emails every day. Every day I get their emails, along with the Tea Party. I know what they're up to.
Now, Ben, I'm going to read a paragraph or two from this, and please feel free to weigh in with, oh, come on, man, whenever you see fit.
Okay. Let me just hear the whole thing, and then I'll do a giant come on, man.
Here we go. If you've been following Illinois budgets for some time, it's deja vu all over again. Ooh. An unbalanced budget, no reforms, more spending, and, of course, more tax hikes. Governor Pritzker unveiled his $42 billion state budget for 2021 this week. The budget increases spending by $2 billion, or 4.1% over 2020, and relies on the passage of a progressive tax amendment to appear balanced.
Wait, time out. Did they use the word progressive?
Mm-hmm.
Whoa. Okay, go on.
In his speech, the governor once again rejected any attempt to get retirement debts under control through a pension amendment, insisting instead that a progressive income tax is a, I don't know what that word is a PANACEA?
Panacea.
I've never heard of that word in my life. Community college.
Mm-hmm. I went to Evanston High School. I'm so sophisticated. That day I took algebra at Evanston High School? Huh? Anyway,
it says here, Pritzker is making the same mistake he did last year. He's failing to tackle Illinois' deep problems. For sure, it's not a budget for a state that's just one notch from a junk credit rating. It's not a budget that deals with the nation's worst pension crisis, the second highest property taxes, the second worst rate of out-migration, and failing real home values. Instead, it's a budget that gives billions more to a political class that has proven to be the most corrupt in the nation, and that will only invite more abuse.
All right. Political class that's proven to be the most corrupt in the nation, like a certain Rod Blagojevich, perhaps. Old Wire.com or whatever you are. What's it called again? Wire.com? Is that whatever it's called? The right-wingers. A political class that's the most corrupt in the nation.
Well, you get it every day. It's wirepoints.org.
All right. Well, org.com. What's the difference? All right. Now, Oh, political class that's corrupt, like a certain Rod Blagojevich, like a certain MAGA hat wearing Rod Blagojevich. I'll be really interested to see if O'Wire and all the other right wingers in the state of Illinois that are opposed to the Fair Tax Initiative continue to use Rod Blagojevich as the poster child for corruption in Illinois now that he's a MAGA hat wearer who's supported by Donald John Trump. You know, you're right. I mean, you were wrong, I should say. They're smart. We're not. They're the ones who run the world, D. Don't get that. We're the ones in this little bubble, okay? They're the ones who control Fox News. So don't get it twisted, man. So they're smart. We're not. But I'm just pointing this one out. I'm really going to enjoy this one. I want to see if the right-wingers in the state of Illinois who talk about the political class that feeds off of you, the regular people of Illinois, who would, by the way, be the beneficiaries of a progressive income tax. If they're going to use Rod Blagojevich as their poster child, now that Rod's a MAGA hat-wearing supporter of Donald Trump, I don't think they will, Dave. They're going to go back to old Michael Joseph Madigan. You know, by the way, Trump, I'm going to ask a favor, man. Why stop with Blago? Let's pardon Louis Arroyo. Let's pardon Martin Sandoval. Let's go pardon Ed Burke, your good pal, who was your property tax lawyer. He saved you a couple $1 million, I want to say, on property taxes. By the way, do they have a picture of Ed Burke in there?
No.
Oh, isn't that interesting? They pick and choose which members of the, what do they call it? The political class, the elite political class to use to fire up the masses. Got a bunch of frauds there. Okay, guys, you know what it is? They don't want the fair tax to pass because they want to starve government and they don't want to pay taxes. And that's basically their agenda, and it has been their agenda since Rauner, their guy, was the governor.
So there you are, everybody. That's the latest in what's going on locally today. Of course, we'll keep you posted on these stories as today's program rolls along. If you're listening on the live stream chat, feel free to weigh in on these stories as well. We'll be reading your comments a little later on in the program today. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. It's the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
Did you know that 40% of the people in Illinois opt to be cremated? Well, it's true. And Chicagoland Cremation Options honors their wishes by providing cremation services directly to the general public. Chicagoland Cremation Options provides an affordable, ethical, and easy cremation arrangement, whether in person or online. Save thousands and streamline the process by going directly to Chicagoland Cremation Options. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Here's how you reach them. ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time, ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. Eroding beaches on Chicago's lakefront.
Read it again.
Eroding beaches on Chicago's lakefront, warmer winters in the upper Midwest, microplastics in our water. What can any one person do? Our best hope for saving the planet and ourselves is through the power of we. Get to the 9th annual One Earth Film Festival, the Midwest premier environmental film festival, March 6th through the 15th. 26 films, 48 events, 4 counties. Engage with filmmakers and experts. Venues include Tesla Gold Coast.
That's correct.
Loyola University, Plant Chicago, Old St. Patrick's Church, Chicago Cultural Center, Lake Theater in Oak Park, and more.
Pork. Sounds delicious.
Go to oneearthfest.org. That's oneearthfilmfest.org. One more time, oneearthfilmfest.org.
Commercial break over. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
You think a guy named Joravsky would know how to pronounce every single name that came in front of him? But I've just discovered I butchered the name of our next guest. Branko Marcetic. Is that good enough?
That is it.
That's good enough?
Yeah.
I think that was it.
Yeah, that was perfect.
Oh, you know what's annoying? He acts like he knew.
No, he said it during the break.
I could tell you, Branko, before the show, how do you pronounce this guy's name? And now, no, Ben, it's Marcetic.
Oh, when is this show over today? You're driving me nuts.
I just have to say, people are like, where's Miles? Miles couldn't be here today. He's here every Thursday. Branko, where's Miles today?
He is in the Big Easy. He's going for Mardi Gras, so he's.
that where he-
that's where he is. Yeah, I wish there was something cooler, or like kind of more journalistic, I could say, but no, he's just having fun.
Yeah, no, I was saying, I thought he was on the coast, but. Well, I guess that is kind of a coast. Anyway, so Miles, he's alluded to you many times, Branko. He's talked about your articles in these times. You're a journalist. You write for In These Times and Jacobin. Give folks a little, background on who you are, where that accent comes from, etc.
Yeah, so I am originally from Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia, hence the unpronounceable name. And then I grew up in New Zealand, spent most of my life there, and I'm at the moment living in Toronto, but will probably be stateside soon. My lovely wife lives here, and we're sort of going through the immigration process for that.
And so how'd you find your way to journalism?
I did history in university. I specialized in U.S. history. Sort of that's a long story as well, and I won't bore you with that. But eventually, I traveled to the U.S. for a year, got a visa here. Just a straight year. You can't extend it or anything. I did several internships, one of which was in these times. Made some connections. Basically, went back home with no career prospects, and thankfully Jacobin was like, "Hey, do you want to do some writing for us?" And the rest is history, I guess.
So how'd you find your way to the politics that you have? I always ask younger people this: you can make so much money, more money, if you go the other way. It's always going to be that way. You sacrifice so much when you go into journalism, one, but particularly when you go to lefty journalism. So how'd you find your way to this?
Yeah, I was always interested and passionate about justice, social justice, racial justice, what have you. I think that's sort of just who I am. A lot of my politics is an extension of who I am, and my personal beliefs about how we should treat others and what kind of world we should have. But also, a lot of it was a study of history. So, looking at the way that social movements and grassroots movements have pushed political change, and also getting, when you study history, you realize that just because things are a certain way now, or were a certain way maybe even 10 years ago, doesn't mean that they were that way 10 years before that, or 30 years before that, or 100 years before that, and we can go on and on incrementally. So yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you talk about grassroots movements pushing social change. We'll get to the debates. We've been talking a lot about the debates already today, last night's Democratic debates. But Branko, one of the points that so many centrists use against Bernie Sanders is that he's destined for failure. That the notion that a grassroots movement can bring change is a pipe dream. I think somebody on the stage called it it may have been Amy Klobuchar at one of the debates called it a pipe dream. One of the centrists were calling it a pipe dream. And so they asked Bernie, how are you going to do this? And Bernie goes, we're going to have a movement. And you could just see the collective eyes rolling in the centrists. And then they tell me, all my centrist friends tell me, it doesn't happen that way. It's powerful people with a lot of money who use that money to get a little bit of incremental changes here, and you have to be satisfied with those incremental changes. That's how the world works, Ben. Get over this Bernie, starry-eyed socialism, grassroots movement. What's your response to that?
I mean, just look at history. The civil rights movement the labor movement of the 20th century and of the 19th century even. I mean, the ferocious battles between labor and capital in those decades. Look at the gay rights movement. Look at even under Obama. Obama shifted on marriage equality and on immigration because he was getting a lot of flack from activist groups who were interrupting his speeches, who were heckling him, who were just generally making life kind of a little bit harder for him, especially as he was looking towards the 2012 election. So the idea, I mean, there's this kind of pitch to realism, right? That, it's only realistic. Social movements aren't a realistic thing. But to be honest, that is the most unrealistic thing. If you look at history, if you look at the evidence, it's always grassroots movements that have created the space and pushed politicians to do what they have to do, right?
I'm just going to make just take a brief exception to the one example you use, something I follow closely, Obama and his ever-shifting evolutionary attitudes toward gay marriage. When he first ran, just point this out, as state senator in a very liberal district in Hyde Park, he was for gay marriage. It's impossible for anybody to look at Barack Obama's background and think that he would be anything but for gay marriage. When you consider the liberal background he had growing up in Hawaii, going to Columbia University for law school, et cetera, being a commuter. And then, of course, when he had wider ambitions to be a senator from Illinois, he suddenly was worried that he might get backlash. So he just said, my religious beliefs have... Sorry, Branko, I can't get through this. My religious beliefs have just made me rethink, and now I'm against gay marriage. And then I think it was more or less, I've been successfully reelected. I've got, they can't kick me out of office. All of a sudden, he's not only for gay marriage, Branko, he's got like the gay flag plastered all over the White House. Man, what a cynical...
I mean, politicians, they go in the path of least resistance, right? They want to get reelected. They don't want to shake up too many feathers. Not all politicians, obviously. We saw some politicians maybe last night that are a little bit more brave, but a lot of politicians are. And, with Obama, I'm sure that he personally, of course, was for marriage equality. And, yeah, like you said, he was very clearly kind of rewriting his own history and beliefs for what he thought was what the electorate wanted. But it was the gay rights movement that was really creating the space for people like him to say, actually, you know what, I'm coming out again for gay marriage. I changed my mind again.
Well, that does actually, what you just said, you were getting at, I think, of what centrists say. They tell activists, all right, here, you keep doing your little activist thing, and when you stir up enough trouble and make it uncomfortable for me to be where I am right now, I'll move to where you are, and I'll come up with some excuse to say, I've rethought things, but that's generally the relationship between mainstream politicians and activists. Bernie's upsetting that apple cart a little bit. Talk about that.
Yeah, well, Sanders is the reason why he's so threatening, or one of the reasons why he's so threatening is, centrists have been saying for years, you can't push too much, you can't be too bold, you can't, we have to lie about these things like our support for certain social issues, whether it's marriage equality or trans rights. We can't talk that much about that because it'll turn off the electorate. And Sanders' entire career has been saying things that have been that are meant to be, at least in the Washington bubble, dangerous or unelectable or radical, and then he keeps getting reelected. If you look at his record, there's actually a really great piece on Jacobin by Matt Karp. He's a historian at Harvard. He looked at Sanders' electoral performances through the 90s in Vermont. And Vermont is a Republican state. Burlington may be a sort of liberal city, but a lot of that state is very rural, very conservative. A lot of people, when Sanders first ran, thought, well, how can a guy who speaks with a thick Brooklyn accent, who has this wild hair, like shirt, how the hell is he going to get a farmer in rural Vermont to vote for him? And somehow he wins with these huge, always outperforms Democratic candidates in Vermont. So this idea that, one, that he's unelectable specifically is really challenged by the facts, but also the idea that, you have to kind of hide your true beliefs because people just can't handle the truth. It's bunk. His career shows that it really is bunk.
All right, let's get into last night's debate. And number one, we'll start with the what I call it, the pounding that Michael Bloomberg took last night. I even my centrist friends would have to admit, at least off the record, they would admit that was a very weak performance. If you were a Bloomberg fan, you have to have walked away from that being a little unsettled, very disappointed. He showed a complete inability to take a punch and then do a counter punch in boxing. I'm a big boxing fan, so he just wasn't able to defend himself. It was almost as though he was irritated that they would dare to insult him. That's my view of it. What was your view of Bloomberg's performance?
Yeah, I thought that was a terrible, terrible night for him. You know, everyone always talks about who are the winners and the losers, and obviously this is all completely subjective, but I do feel like the general consensus that I've seen among pretty much everyone is that he was the loser of that night. Just not only did he take a pounding, and, you know, they attacked Sanders as well, but the thing is, Bloomberg just couldn't mount any sort of defense. He couldn't even muster an explanation for things that you would think he must have known were coming. You know, the stuff about stop and frisk, the stuff about the NDAs, the treatment of women in his company, all this kind of thing. And I think that was the failure. You know, when people watch these debates, it's kind of a cliche to say that they're not really that much about policy, which is true to an extent. But there is a large part of it that people are just watching and they're seeing, okay, how is this person, based on what I'm seeing here, going to perform against Donald Trump in a debate? You know, how are they going to look? And Bloomberg looked very weak, just hit after hit after hit with just really, sometimes just pathetic explanations. You know, oh, I didn't realize that stop and frisk, it got out of hand. Whoops. You know, an explanation he's already tried and of course has been, you know, doesn't match up with the actual record. So,
or perhaps the most pathetic moment in the debate in terms of Bloomberg, when I think it was Elizabeth Warren who was coming at him strong on the non-disclosure agreements that he had signed with various women who work for his corporation, who would then drop their lawsuits, and no one knows really what they were accusing him of or his company of, and how much money he paid them because of his non-disclosure agreements. And he dismissed it as, well, they just didn't like jokes I made. Man, that may have been the worst moment I've ever seen in a debate at this stage.
There was an audible groan, wasn't there, from the audience? I mean, that's always bad. I feel like that audience is sort of primed to just applaud for everything, everything and anything. And the fact that they just reacted that negatively to that, I think, shows how unconvincing and just terrible that answer was. But yeah.
All right, well, Branko, let me ask you this question before we move on to Bernie and how he did in debate. Not that you're speaking for all Bernie Sanders type or lefties or all left of center journalists, et cetera, but do you think there's any way, given Bloomberg's past and his record, that sort of the left wing of the Democratic Party will embrace him as the standard bearer, even against Trump?
I think it's important to know with Sanders, even though he is a socialist, a democratic socialist, he, I think at heart, is a radical. He, as a politician, is a pragmatist. What he's putting forward is not a socialist program. It's as he puts it, a continuation of the New Deal, sort of finishing off of the job of Roosevelt back in the 30s. And, you know, it's stuff that is basically the norm in a lot of Western democracies in Europe, for example. Now, will maybe getting some of those wins provide the opportunity to push beyond that? Of course, but I think ultimately Sanders' platform is a pretty normal kind of Democratic voter wish list. You know, it's in theory what the party has been saying that they're for a century. I mean, you know, this whole push now with the Democrats saying, "Oh, single payer is too dangerous; it'll never happen; it's unpopular." The party. Universal healthcare has been a priority for the party through the entire 20th century, up to seemingly 2016 when they decided, actually, no, we don't want to do this anymore. So I think a lot of it is fear. I think if Sanders ends up winning, not just the nomination but the presidency, I think a lot of Democrats will kind of come around him. I think there will definitely be a lot of conservative and corporate-funded Democrats who will, do the bidding of the people that they get their money from and try and oppose him. But yeah, it'll probably, to some extent, it will, I think, show a split in the Democratic Party, who's sort of on the side of, the grassroots and working class people, and who's on the side of basically the people who have controlled the party for decades.
Actually, what I was asking you about is there any way that the left of center part of the party would support Bloomberg, given his background?
That's a dicey, much dicier question. I think there's a split. You look at someone like Noam Chomsky. He was asked this question, and his answer was, yes, I would absolutely vote for Bloomberg against Trump. And I would agree with that. I think Bloomberg is terrible. He'll be 1 degree, I don't want to say better, but he'll be less reactionary than Trump in some instances. But I think the bigger thing with nominating someone like Bloomberg, and God help us if that is the choice, but hopefully it's not. But if that is the choice, you can vote for Bloomberg as a sort of stopgap measure to take Trump out, because Trump is we're on a ticking time clock with climate change and so many other things. So getting Trump out for that reason alone is important. But it would not be enough to just vote for him. I think a lot of leftists would vote for him potentially and then organize against him afterwards. Now, this is just me. I think there are a lot of people. Certainly I see the tweets, people who are left-wing people in the U.S. Political scene who are saying, I will absolutely not vote for Bloomberg. But yeah, take that as you would.
No, that is I did not know that Noam Chomsky had made that comment. I missed that.
Someone emailed him, and they put a screenshot of it on Twitter. They were actually angry at him for saying this.
I love my beloved lefties. They're mad at Noam Chomsky. The guy's 90-some-year-old lefties. Give him a break, okay? Gave you his opinion. Oh man, see, that's so unfair. That's the thing. Like Bernie gets so much abuse on the stage last night for the attitude of so many of his left of center supporters. Like, he controls them. This is, Branko, I really do think it's unfair. Knowing lefties the way I do, you don't control a lefty. You know what I'm saying? It's like, he or she has his mind, and he or she is going to speak it.
Yeah.
And
you don't want to take the left on the internet. This is all the left does at the moment is posting. No, that's an exaggeration, but a lot of people.
I
post
actually think
all
you're onto something there.
Well, I don't want to completely. There's a lot of really great organizing happening in DSA for Sanders and a whole host of other issues. But also, a lot of people are online. This is what they're doing. Do you really want to take people on their sort of home perch? I guess.
No, the left goes after Bernie, too. I follow Bernie's Instagram feed. It's a tangent within a tangent, Branko. So Bernie did this appeal that he put out about how he's proud of being Jewish and how being Jewish has shaped his worldview, made him a champion for social justice, okay? So I'm reading, I listened to this, and then I was moved by it. And then I started reading the responses that came from all corners of the political spectrum. And there were a lot of lefties like, what are you doing? I mean, they were mad at him for bringing religion into the matter, or they were mad at him for not taking the opportunity to speak out for the Palestinian cause, or they're just generally mad at him. You're just playing their game, Bernie. So he was getting much criticism, as he was against right-wingers who were saying, oh, yeah, now you're just saying this because you want the Jewish vote and you're not really Jewish enough. People are really weird on the internet.
Yeah, it's the internet. This is the thing that frustrates me about this whole thing. It's like if you go spend any time on Twitter or the comment section, I don't know why you would, but the comment sections of various news sites, and you will find some of the worst bile you could possibly find anywhere. I very rarely meet people who say a lot of the things that they say that Bernie Sanders supporters are kind of accused of saying online, as if that's sort of representative of everyone. I don't really meet people like that in real life. Maybe the odd person, but otherwise. And the idea that they're uniquely bad, I mean, again, go online. There's supporters of Kamala Harris who are still, diehards for her, who even though she's out, who say all manner of horrible things online to other candidates. There's Elizabeth Warren supporters who say some really nasty things to either Sanders people or people in his campaign. So I just don't buy that.
Yeah. By the way, but your ultimate point is a very good one. I'm going to steal it and use it all the time, but I'll try to give you credit for it. And that is, there will be a segment of the left that will support. They'll follow Noam Chomsky. I know I would. I would vote for Bloomberg over Trump. Climate change being probably reason number one, and choice, judges, you go down the list of things. Yes, the organizing against him to keep pushing him. I don't know if you saw this at the debate where in the last couple days or so, he came out with a proposal that would tax Wall Street. And we call it here the LaSalle Street tax. In the city of Chicago, people talk about taxing the Board of Trade, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. For years, it goes nowhere. But Bloomberg, of all people, put that out as a prospect. So, maybe he is feeling pressure from the Bernie people to be more of a Democrat, if you follow what I'm saying. So, yes, I think you're right about that. All right, let's go back with the probably Bloomberg's proudest moment of the night, if you were Bloomberg ranking it, and that's the punch he took at Bernie, having to do with, and I'm doing this off the top of my head, Branko, he's a millionaire socialist with 3 homes. When you heard that, what was your thoughts?
This is an old attack. I mean, look, Sanders is a millionaire. I think the correct thing is it's not about getting rich. It's about the idea of creating a political structure that is going to, either redistribute wealth or, in other ways, use the wealth that someone has built up and put it into social programs to help people. It doesn't bother me that Sanders is $1 million. I think he got that from his book in, 2017. The 3 houses thing, I mean, the guy is a senator. He has a house in Burlington that he lives in, his home. He has a house in D.C. Where he has to spend a significant amount of time, and I think he has a holiday home. That's sort of a kind of upper middle class aspiration. I don't think it's particularly corrupting, to have it a holiday home. And I think when people use this attack, they're really kind of grasping at straws. I mean, again, the problem with Bloomberg isn't just that he's fantastically rich. And by the way, he's worth $60 billion. I mean, I can't do the math here, but put $1 million into $60 billion, and you'll see just how what kind of stratospheric wealth we're actually talking about. But it's not just that. It's that Bloomberg doesn't want to fight for a political structure that will actually tax him more and redistribute that money. He wants to keep it all for himself. I think Sanders will be very happy to pay, whatever. I'm not sure how much he would pay under the income brackets, the tax brackets now, but yeah.
Well, I can guarantee you that will be a line of attack that Donald Trump will use against Bernie Sanders if Bernie is the nominee. Guarantee you, absolutely, positively, we'll probably see pictures of all homes. You get what I'm saying? This is how the game is played in this country. I'm not certain how successful it would be, because my sense is if you have a bias against who Bernie Sanders is, whether he has 3 homes or 1 home, it won't really matter. You follow me, Branko? If it's like if he has any home, he has a house. He's not living in poverty. That's general. That's how often it's done. If you're a socialist, you're supposed to live in poverty.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
If you're poor, you're only supporting left-wing policies because they benefit you. If you're rich, it's because you're a hypocrite. So there's no way to win here. They attack him on the same time for when he was a poor single dad. They call him a deadbeat, and they say that he was lazy and all this stuff. So again, there's no way to win. I think they're going to come at him with anything. I mean, I think also this shows you that far from this persona of a bomb-throwing radical that people have about Sanders, is that he's ultimately a pragmatist who will work within that system. As he said in that debate yesterday, this was probably a good preview of what he might say against Trump if he hits him with the house thing. He said, like a lot of families in Vermont, I have a beach house, and I'm a senator. I live in D.C. To me, that seems completely reasonable. And I feel like it probably will be to a lot of people.
I agree with you on that point. I don't think it'll be, let's put it this way, I don't think it'll swing the election. I just can anticipate the ugliness and the nastiness of the debate. What was your thoughts when you heard them having that exchange? I think it was Sanders and Bloomberg on the whole issue of social inequity and whether we should have billionaires in this country.
I actually don't remember that segment. I was in East Times party, so there was at one point there was a lot of talking. So I actually, you might have to give me a little bit of a reminder.
It may have been one of my favorite moments of the debate because they were really getting at something essential. It wasn't just 3 homes in Vermont, or it wasn't really unfair, like the way they blend socialism with communism, totalitarianism. Those are just cheap shots. But this got into a substantive issue of whether it is fair to have a society in which people are allowed to accumulate so much wealth. So like you talked about the difference between $1 million and $1 billion, and then the difference between $1 billion and $60 billion. We have a governor here in the state of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, who's probably in this building today, who's worth, I believe, $3 billion. That is so, I mean, when you just think about the difference between $3 billion and $60 billion. And so then the issue that Bloomberg and Sanders were raising last night is whether it's fair to allow one person, whether it's healthy for society to allow one person to accumulate so much money. And Bernie was actually saying, no, it's not, which sort of strikes at the whole ethos we have in this country that you could do whatever you want. The sky's the limit. And so the notion of making $60 billion, somehow you've earned it.
Well, I think there's two things. I think there's the kind of moral, ethical component of this. You know, is it moral to have or to hoard so much wealth when so many people, not just in the U.S., of course, there's tremendous poverty here, but around the world have so little, and to just keep that money and to sort of just sit on it while it could be used to both get us out of the climate crisis and to end or at least alleviate world poverty. So that's one aspect of it. But I think we're also seeing with Bloomberg's candidacy and then, things like the Jeffrey Epstein scandal, the Jeffrey Epstein case, this is what happens, one outcome of allowing people to just build up these insane amounts of wealth that they can then use for whatever purpose. Epstein, a big part of the reason why he had such an easy ride through the criminal justice system, again, in case people aren't familiar with the case, you should Google it. But Jeffrey Epstein was a billionaire pedophile, a sex trafficker who was taking advantage of young girls all over the world. He got sent to jail. He got the sweetheart deal. He was barely in jail. He was actually abusing girls while he was in jail because they would let him out. All this is because he had money, not just a large amount of money, but a colossal, unimaginable amount of money. He used that to buy people, influence among politicians. He used it to buy influence among intellectuals and scientists and all this kind of thing. He had a ranch in New Mexico that he wanted to use, and this is in the New York Times. This is not me just making stuff up. He wanted to use that ranch to artificially inseminate with his sperm a whole army of young women so he would seed the human race with his DNA. This was his, maybe outlandish, maybe impossible. This is what he wanted to do. And Bloomberg now, we're seeing he's using a fraction of his fortune, tiny fraction of his fortune, to basically buy the election or try and buy the election. Raise his polling, $360 million he's already spent, maybe even more, on round-the-clock ads. I mean, this is the problem, is that that much money, it's not even about the ethical nature of it. It is about the practical nature of, are we going to allow people to build up that kind of power that they can then use unaccountably, Who knows how many other Epstein-type people are out there or what they're doing with the billions and billions they've got.
Just hearing you go off on Epstein, we've discussed Epstein on the show many times. Leonard Goodman's been on the show. We did a deep dive with attorney Leonard Goodman. I urge everybody to check it out. One of Leonard's theories, I don't know if you know Leonard, is that Epstein was perhaps an operative for the CIA, and that's how he got away with it. I urge everybody to check out that interview, the conversation I had with Leonard not too long ago. Have you written about it? Excuse my ignorance in asking this. Have you written about the Epstein case?
A little bit. I've followed it fairly closely. I wrote one piece. I was working on this book about Joe Biden for 6 months, and so I didn't have tons of time to do lots of pieces about it. But it's a fascinating case, obviously, and outrageous. I wrote a thing for Jacobin magazine, so jacobinmag.com. I believe the title is Jeffrey Epstein is the face of the billionaire class, basically making this point. Look at all the terrible things that we found out he was able to do or planning to do with this huge hoard of wealth that he had. And this is exactly why we need to basically arrest the economic concentration of power among billionaires and others who are maybe a notch below that.
Yeah, no, it's pretty clear in the aftermath that Jeffrey Epstein was a lunatic. Putting it mildly, and yet you're right. His wealth bought over alliances instead of people being repelled, you could just imagine, like, they go spend an evening with Jeffrey Epstein and listen to his lunacy, and then you walk home, and you're talking to your friend or your husband, your wife, whatever, and you're like, man, that guy's crazy. But then you know, he invited us back to his house next week. Well, he's worth like, you know, gazillion dollars. Maybe he'll fund my project. So you got to go sit and listen to his nuttiness, you know. But then you pretend like, oh, Jeff, you're making some really good points there, man.
Well, it's a lot easier than you know, actually having to make friends. You can just sort of dole out money.
Jeffrey Epstein. You mentioned Joe Biden, the work you've done on Joe Biden. Talk a little bit about that.
I wrote a series of pieces in 2018 about Biden because he looked like he was running. Guy had a 40-year record. I've sort of done a bunch of pieces about candidates before that, like Kamala Harris and Kirsten Gillibrand, doing kind of deep dives into their histories. And you know, Biden's the next logical choice. This guy's been around for nearly half a century. And so I wrote that, got a pretty good response, and it was actually your friend, Miles, yours and mine friend, Miles, who advised me, hey, you should write a book about this. Because this guy's probably going to be the nominee. Maybe he might even be the president. Who knows? So there was a sort of there's a longer story to it, but ultimately Jacobin funded the book, the magazine that I work for, and it has been published by Verso. So it's out there now. It's sort of I try and do two things with the book. On the one hand, I'm kind of making I guess a polemic, making a case against Biden. So this is if you look at his history, this is what makes him particularly ill-suited to face Trump. But I'm also, you know, kind of going through his record, showing what he has done through his career, and genuinely trying to explain why he has the politics that he does, and why he has the beliefs, and why he's done what he's done, which, if you read the book, is pretty bad overall.
Well, I'm going to read the book and then bring you back in the show and talk about the book. At the moment, I do my rankings all the time. I don't know if I told you this on the phone. Maybe I did. You know, I require all my guests to do rankings. I think I required my next, the guest after my next guest to do a ranking today. You know, come on, don't duck and dodge. You got to have three. All right. So, Bernie, Elizabeth Warren, though, she's neck and neck with Bernie after last night. Those are my top two. For the longest time, Andrew Yang was three, but then he dropped out. So now I got my third is Joe Biden, the subject of your book. I put Joe Biden ahead of Michael Bloomberg, Buttigieg, and Amy Klobuchar. So I'm going to have to read your book. Maybe you convince me, and then I don't know who I'll have at number three. Branko, thank you so much for stepping in today. I appreciate it a lot. We'll get you back whenever you're in Chicago. I understand you. So you say you're mostly in Canada, but you come to Chicago more often?
Every now and then I have to visit my wife, and she comes to me. Sounds like I'm here. So we it's tough, but we'll make it through.
Well, we'll do the deep dive on the Biden book. I think that'll be a lot of fun to do.
That'd
Maybe
be
it's
awesome.
a bonus.
Oh, that'd be great. And please tell everybody listening where they can follow you, all that business.
Yeah, Jacobin magazine, obviously, in these times. Actually, Leonard Goodman is technically paying my salary, so that's nice. I'm one of his.
The aforementioned Leonard Goodman who was
that's
on my
right,
show?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
And find me on Twitter at B Marcetic with an H after the C, which is not how you spell my name, but for simplicity's sake. And the book is called Yesterday's Man, The Case Against Joe Biden. You can buy it from the Jacobin website. Just Google Jacobin Yesterday's Man. It will be in stores, I believe, at the end of this month as well.
All right, very good. My next guest, Don Villar, is going to come on. He's from the Chicago Federation of Labor. When he comes on, he's going to do his New Zealand accent. All right? So
I'll stick around. I got to hear this.
You should have heard him make fun of my New Zealand accent. Branko's like, that sounds like a Chicagoan. Pretend he's from New Zealand.
Well, I'm curious to hear if his will also be like a Michael Caine Cockney. Because this is the stock. My friend Eric, who lives in Chicago, this is his catch-all accent for anyone British or Australian or New Zealand.
Hello, mate. Yeah, you're right. It's sort of whatever. Anyway, thank you very much, Branko. We're going to take a break, and Don Villar will be our guest. Stick around, everybody. Hey, everybody. What you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. Man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffmanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. J-E-F-F. M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
Right now at the Chicago Sun-Times website, chicago.suntimes.com. It's the latest episode of the Fran Spielman Show. Throughout the last few weeks, Fran has had our Cook County State's Attorney candidates on the program. This week, more of the same. Fran welcomed one Bob Fioretti to the studio. Here's a little bit of that.
I have advocated for victims' rights. I've advocated for the wrongfully incarcerated. I have an understanding of our criminal justice system, our tax system, our civil system. I believe I'm much better satisfied and suited for this office than either one of the three candidates that are running.
All right, and that's all you get. All right, now you got to go to the Chicago Sun-Times website, find the Fran Spielman podcast, and go download it. Get informed on our Cook County State's Attorney candidates. She spoke with Donna Moore last week. This week, Bob Fioretti. Oh, she also spoke with Bill Conway a couple weeks back as well. It's the Fran Spielman Show every week at the Chicago Sun-Times website or wherever else you download your favorite podcast. Hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show is just moments away. But before we get into that, well, we got to thank the following unions once again for jumping on board and sponsoring this humble little program that we have. Unions like the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 in District 8. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9 are sponsors, as well as the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Unions, can't thank you enough. Couldn't do it without you. And of course, today's program is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hour number 2, let's go. It is Thursday, February 20th. And live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, Union man Don Villar makes his return, and we welcome Denika McMillen. And now your host, he is indeed not feeling the Berg. Chicago Reader columnist, Ben Joravsky.
Not feeling the Berg, absolutely not. Not feeling the Berg at all. But you know what? I said it once. I said, Don Villar, I said if Michael Bloomberg is the nominee, I'll vote for him over Donald John Trump. I'm not, that much of an extremist. I will vote for Bloomberg over Trump with the hopes, as Branko pointed out, that the left can force Bloomberg to make accommodations that he probably wouldn't make on his own.
Mm-hmm. You know what? Right now, the AFL-CIO, we're taking guidance from them, and they're staying out of it until after the convention. So I might have an opinion, but I think can't throw anything on in one favor or another. But yeah, I do concur. Bloomberg was a little rough last night.
Oh, my God. We've been talking about that all day. You got an update, D?
Our Facebook friends have been weighing in on it as well. Last night was that debate. Oh, how about that Bloomberg, huh? If you were a Bloomberg fan before that debate, well, you're hiding today.
Come on out, guys.
Yeah.
Where are you?
Yeah, the question posted on our Facebook page, who won, who lost, and who else feels they need to take a cold shower after last night's debate? A few of you have weighed in. We'll read your responses now. Shout out to our good friend Alan. Alan's been with us since since the radio days, Ben Joravsky.
Ah, the good old radio days.
Yeah. Before you're
fired.
Yeah. All right. Alan says Bernie came out looking pretty good. Warren took out Bloomberg early, and nobody else really stood out. What do you think about that?
I think that Elizabeth Warren really stood out. I think it was Elizabeth Warren's night. She killed it. And I say this as a guy, remember, Bernie was my number one choice. Still is my number one choice. But I think Elizabeth Warren did great. And I've been throwing this theory out to everybody I bump into in the hallways. Might as well throw it out to everybody out there. If it's a brokered convention, I think Elizabeth Warren is making a case that she's the compromise candidate, and Castro would be her running mate. There you go. You heard it first, Don Villar, right here on this show. Lenny's nodding her head going, I can get into that. That's my humble opinion. That's how strong Elizabeth Warren did it last night.
Shout out to our Facebook friend Shannon. Shannon says, Warren with the best comeback since Muhammad Ali busted Jerry Quarry for a third-round TKO. After a 3.5-year layoff, she skinned Bloomberg alive.
Wait a minute. Time out. Who said this?
Shannon.
Shannon, I love you, Shannon. You know about Muhammad Ali?
Wow.
I was thinking, you know what's funny? I was doing a boxing metaphor in my mind. Don, are you a boxing fan?
You know, I've watched it a couple times, sure.
Do you remember when Ali beat Foreman in 1974, I want to say it was, in a fight in Africa?
Oh, yeah.
And Cosell was doing it. George Foreman is down, George. Anyway, that's what I thought last night. I thought Elizabeth Warren was Muhammad Ali and Michael Bloomberg was George Foreman.
Millennials, hang tight. All right, shout out to Don. No, not Don Villar. There's another Don.
Another Don out there.
Don says, sorry to say. Now, this is the first time I've heard this opinion. Don says, sorry to say, Bloomberg won. Got slathered with crap, took the hit. Money will buy Teflon.
Hey, man,
Jeez.
I like to smoke what he's smoking. Cause
yeah, what channel was he watching?
Man.
Oh, he's one of these no such thing as bad publicity guys, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, they all got publicity. I mean, and the other people needed the publicity more than Bloomberg. Bloomberg's got about $300 million worth of ads. By the way, Bloomberg, you know, we'll take your money. You could drop an ad right here in the Ben Joravsky show.
I got to pay rent, man.
That's right. Yeah.
Call Lenny. She'll take your
Come on.
money. Come on, Bloomberg. Well, what are we, chopped liver? We'll take your money.
Marguerite weighed in. She said, hey, can Pete go rescue the Boy Scouts or do something useful?
Oh, man, Pete Buttigieg.
Oh.
I thought Amy Klobuchar got the better of him in that.
Cleaned his clock.
Oh, you think you're so smart. You know, because she didn't know the name of the Mexican. Everybody, the Mexican president of Mexico. Look, we all stumble, folks. We're not machines, all right? You know, my memory, Don, the older I get, I lose track of things.
You and me both.
Yeah. You know, I was talking to Denika on the phone earlier today, and she was talking about her race in Naperville, and I was like trying to remember names from DuPage County, and I couldn't do it. Of course, it was 40 years ago. I was trying to come up with these. Bernie Klein was his name. He was a civil rights activist in DuPage County. But anyway, the point is, you know, sometimes Pete is too smart for his own good, Don Villar. You know what I'm saying? So last night was one of those moments where he was trying to undercut Amy Klobuchar. She goes, "Oh, are you saying I'm dumb?" I thought a lot of people could, like, you know, feel that.
They could relate to.
Yeah.
It was that was a really good moment there. I mean, she really took him out there. That retort was like, whoa, you didn't expect that.
I know.
Yes.
I'm Amy's not in my top 3, but I applauded that. Oh yeah, you're gonna make fun of me because I stumbled at a moment. You think you're so smart? And he was like,
Feel free to weigh in with your thoughts on the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show, also on Twitter as well. And we'll do one more comment here. Layla commented here, and please, Michael Buffer, do not sue us. Layla says, let's get ready to rumble.
I guess millennials would know that.
Absolutely.
More boxing references.
It was in Vegas, wasn't it?
It was in Vegas. Very good to Don Villar showing he knows a thing or two about the fighting game.
There you go.
All right, thank you very much, Dee. That's some good stuff from our listeners. Don Villar, we already talked about the debate. Let's move on and talk about J.B. Pritzker's budget. We haven't, you know, it kind of got lost in the shuffle. I'm going to ask you eventually about Blago, and you're an old newsman. We can have some fun with that one. Your general thoughts on J.B. Pritzker's budget?
You know, he's coming off a great year last year. I mean, just getting everything together, having a balance. I mean, having a budget passed for the first time in for 2-3 years, and just having consensus to some extent, right? And the capital spending projects, the capital bill, that's doing great. It's putting a lot of people to work, and he's earmarking more monies towards a apprentice programs towards job readiness, job training. So yeah, from the labor movement's perspective, he's doing great. You know, he's putting people to work. He's promoting some of these major projects, that long needed projects in the state. You know, infrastructure improvements, and it's so much. We've got a lot. There's a lot ahead, and I see more improvements going down the road. So I mean, it was really appreciated his address yesterday, and hitting all the marks.
Well, one of the things that didn't get accentuated much in the coverage, because they were talking about the budget ploy he's making about fair tax, and we'll get to all that,
right,
was the fact that he's the beneficiary, in my humble opinion, of widespread approval for the legalization of marijuana.
Oh, yeah.
And so he talked about that, how, they always talk about it in terms of the money it's bringing in. I always talk about it in terms of how unfair the law was, and how mainly black people got punished for it, and everybody was smoking it. So I don't know how as a society we could have tolerated that for so many years, that just gross inequity right in our face. But I do believe that Pritzker will be riding public support in that. He'll be the beneficiary for a long time, because I do believe that it's a very popular initiative in the state of Illinois.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what were the reports the first day? $40 million in pot sales first day.
Yeah.
And it's continuing on, and we have a pot shortage all of a sudden.
Pot shortage.
So that's going to be, UFCW, they recently unionized one of the production houses, pot production. And actually, all this production facilities, they have to stay in Illinois because you can't cross state borders. You can't be importing this pot from out. It's still illegal to import the pot in.
Oh, and Don, we need to ask you the Ben Joravsky Show reefer question. You got any? Got any weed?
Yeah, now you don't have to say, hey, that's where I hide my weed.
Don Villar has never inhaled. No. I love there's an Illinois element to it all, because, the standard line by the right, Rauner, Tribune's editorial page, is that people are fleeing the state of Illinois. This is their standard line, because we have too many unions. We have too much pension obligations, and our taxes are too high, and that's why people are fleeing the state of Illinois. That's the standard line they use. And now people are coming now. We got reefer, so people coming in from Iowa and Indiana, etc.
Wisconsin, yeah. I mean, think of all the border dispensaries, right? How they're probably going gangbusters right now, right?
Except they're out of bud right now. So come on, let's go, farmers.
Yeah,
get to work.
Grow that stuff.
All right, but really, what was embedded in that budget address was sort of a threat, if you will, and it has to do with the Fair Tax Initiative. I'm a big supporter of the Fair Tax Initiative. Love to hear what our next guests have to say about that. But the Fair Tax Initiative is the one, just to remind everybody, in which we would change the rates so that the wealthier you are, you would pay a higher rate on your state income tax. We have a flat tax right now in the state of Illinois. I think that's exceedingly unfair. It's not progressive in any way. It's regressive, because why would you would tax Pritzker and Rauner at the same rate as Dennis and Ben and
it doesn't make sense.
And Don Villar. So it doesn't make any sense. But what he embedded,
he slipped that in there.
He goes, listen, all right, you passed the fair tax, I'm going to have more money for education. You don't pass the fair tax, going to have to make some cuts. The Republicans are crying. They're crying like little babies. What was your reaction to that one, Don?
I concur with that. I mean, I think, look, we're pushing hard on the fair tax. I think that's something, that's a big push that everybody's behind, because it impacts so many people, so many workers, so many jobs. So I get what he's trying. I heard that as well. And at the end of the day, let's just let's focus on passing that referendum in November. And the other side, they're pushing on the other. They're pushing hard on the other end, right?
Oh, yeah,
because they want to see another austerity government, austerity budget and cuts, and that's what they're working hard on their side. But I think hopefully, like you said, riding that the goodwill of that good weed will and and everything else. And I mean, so far he's been a good chief executive of this state. His first year, he knocked it out of the ballpark, and just keep that going.
All right, well, we'll be following that fair tax one down the road. That'll kind of be lost in the shuffle. It'll be on the ballot in November, and it has to pass with over 60% of the vote. So it's not going to be an easy thing. And it will be lost in the weeds, lost in the shuffle, I should say, of the presidential battle.
Right. That's why it's going to be important to get a strong turnout come November. That's going to be critical. So somebody will electrify especially if you have a good Democrat that comes out, really gets turnout up.
All right, you're telling me something about an initiative having to do with the Temp Economy. Get into that a little bit.
Well, actually earlier this week on President's Day, we are working with a lot of our worker centers. We put together a video, actually a 6-part docu-series on the perma-temping and just the plight of a lot of the workers in the state. 1 out of 3 workers in Illinois and Chicago classified as contingent. So they're temps, part-time, freelancers, independent contractors, 1 out of 3. And because of the way the laws have been written, the way things have been going on, I mean, they don't have many rights. And they're subject to so many abuses and discrimination. And there's just so many issues that they're facing that because of the growth of the temp economy, the gig economy and the temp industry in this state, it's being felt on their back. So there's a docuseries that we put together working with the Chicago Workers Collaborative and some other groups, Warehouse Workers for Justice and Raise the Floor Alliance, just talking about the plight these people are going through.
Is there any specific legislation that's being proposed?
Not yet. I mean, there's stuff that there's stuff that's out there that maybe mirroring something along what California passed. But you know what? I don't have that in front of me right now. I mean, there's a lot of talk about it, but so far nothing has been put to paper. I don't believe, but I'll have to find out. But that's something I think we need in this state. And I mean, the other thing we're working on is at least we've got some great temp worker laws in this state that the legislature has passed, but the problem is enforcement. And before Governor Pritzker took office, we had a labor department of Labor, an agency that wasn't looking out for labor. They weren't enforcing a lot of the temp laws because, like every temp agency operating in Illinois, they're supposed to register with the state, and the vast majority of them were not during Rauner's administration. They weren't registered. The vast majority. So now, Governor Pritzker's administration, his director, the Labor Department, they're working on that and sort of correcting that. And that's some of the issues that need to be addressed because that wasn't addressed during the 4 years of Rauner.
All right. Now, let me talk a little bit about Blago before I let you go get out of here, bring Denika McMillen on our next guest. You're an old news guy.
Yeah.
Folks know this. He works for Federation Labor now, but back in the day, you were a news writer for ABC, I want to say, right?
On the morning show.
On the morning show. Had to get up early. Good God, I don't know how you did that. Excellent column. I got to give a shout out to Mark Brown. He had a lot of fun with this. Mark Brown, the political writer for many years here at the Chicago Sun-Times, and he went out to Blagojevich's house to hang out with the crowd. Blago came out and met the people in his first day back. This guy's unbelievable. I just say this, Don Villar. Guy spent 8 years behind in a federal lockup, comes out within a day. He's like flawless oration. You know what I mean? I know.
Yeah.
He's got a huge future in radio.
Maybe
it'll be right-wing radio, but he has a huge future. But anyway, here's what Mark Brown wrote. He concluded his column. He's talking about the utter madness of the scene where everybody's showing up to shake hands with Blagojevich. And he writes this. On Tuesday, I implored Blagojevich to just go away quietly and leave us in peace. And I don't count anything he does in this first week against him in that regard. We wouldn't leave him alone even if he begged. There were more reporters on that lawn than covering J.B. Pritzker's budget address in Springfield. That's on us, of course, and I apologize on behalf of the profession, but it's hard to turn away when the circus comes back to town. That's pretty clever.
Oh, he hit the nail right on the head there. I mean, that yesterday morning I was actually at City Hall for a press conference in support of a legislation the nurses are pushing, and there was just 2 cameras there and one or 2 reporters, and one of the reporters is a good friend of mine from my old TV days. And I said, "Why aren't you out there?" In the circus. But you're right. That's one of the things. It's like it took away all the attention. I mean, even I had the TV on in my office later. Like, whoa, you couldn't stop. It's like a car wreck, right?
Yes.
You can't take your eyes away, and that's the problem with that. And it sort of reminded me just the scrum and the circus, like what it was like back in the day in the newsroom in 2008 when he got hauled away in cuffs from his home, and then in 2010 when he was 2010 when he was sent to
it was 2010 or I can't remember.
Yeah,
Lost track of time.
2011.
2011.
Oh yeah, 2012. Yeah, 2012.
Yeah.
2012 when he was hauled away to Florence, Colorado, and the circus behind that. And you're an old, you understand news, and sometimes it's those big stories that sort of get us going in the morning. It's tough to do, but sometimes that's what feeds news people.
No, look, I'm going to say this. I'll put this out here. When I listen to J.B. Pritzker and Mayor Lori Lightfoot, they begrudgingly, they reporters ask about Blagojevich, and they do this side thing. This is like standard 101 of what an incumbent Democratic politician has to do, Don. So you have to sort of sigh and go, all right, I'll answer your question once, like this beneath my dignity to talk about something that absolutely everyone in the universe is talking about. I'll answer it once. That's the only time I'm going to answer it. And and they rip Blagojevich, as they should. Blagojevich is a con artist, et cetera, and so forth.
Not defending him.
Yeah, I'm not defending him either. But I'm going to put this out here right now. If you think this is the last we've seen of Rod Blagojevich, you're crazy. He's cut a deal with Donald Trump. That's part of the reason why Donald Trump let him out of federal prison. And his job will be go on the road for the next 6 months pushing Donald Trump, trying to link Donald Trump to like great liberators of our time. If anybody's convinced by this, I feel sorry for them. But that's what he's going to do, Don Villar. You know it. We've not heard the last of Blagojevich.
We haven't heard the last of him, and I mean, right now he's looking. He says he's unemployed. He's looking for a job. He's got to support his family somehow. So we'll see where that job lands him. Who's going to be hiring?
Yes, we'll see who's. I guess we'll have to watch the statements, the financial statements coming out of the Donald Trump campaign to see if any consultant fees are getting their way to Rod Blagojevich. All right, Don Villar, any last messages you want to make before I let you go out the door and bring on Denika McMillen?
You know what? The other thing is the census. Don't forget the census, folks. April 1st, the census starts. It goes till July, till the end of July. But so much is at stake, and especially for the labor movement, because a lot of the federal dollars that come into Illinois, they support jobs and workers, and that's so critical. An undercount means a loss in potential federal funding, whether it's education, social service, or infrastructure. So those are the things that we're working on to make sure everybody's counted.
Absolutely. All right, we'll be talking about that more in the coming weeks. Because that's very important. Don Villar, thank you very much. Chicago Federation of Labor. Denika McMillen's on deck. We're going to bring her on when we return.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
Did you know that 40% of the people in Illinois opt to be cremated? Well, it's true. And Chicagoland Cremation Options honors their wishes by providing cremation services directly to the general public. Chicagoland Cremation Options provides an affordable, ethical, and easy cremation arrangement, whether in person or online. Save thousands and streamline the process by going directly to Chicagoland Cremation Options. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Here's how you reach them. ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time, ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
It's Chicagoland's adult entertainment playground. It's the world-famous Admiral Theater, 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. The Admiral is homegrown from Chicago, and it's the most conveniently located club in all of the city. 15 minutes from the O'Hare Airport in downtown Chicago Loop. Voted Chicago's best strip club, the Admiral has showgirls galore and a variety of adult entertainment shows. The world-famous Admiral Theater, open every day from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m., 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. For events, showtime, and other information, visit AdmiralX.com. Must be 18 years of age or older to enter.
So again, on behalf of Patty and Amy and Annie and me, we want to again express our deepest gratitude to President Trump. Like I said, as a Republican president and a Democratic governor, he didn't have to do this. But President Trump is not a typical politician.
That's right.
He's tough, he's outspoken, he gets things done. He's a problem solver in a business where too many politicians don't want to solve problems. All they want to do is play politics and get nothing done for the people. He's got I'm a Trumpocrat.
The Trumpocrats, that's right.
If I have the ability to vote, I'm going to vote for him. Well, I don't know that they'll allow me to vote, but I'll get into that in a minute. But let me just say that our president is he's tough and outspoken, and he has the courage to challenge the old way.
That's right.
He's the one who's actually fighting to bring real change. That's why he gets so much pushback. But notwithstanding being tough, he's also a man with a kind heart.
Eroding beaches on Chicago's lakefront, warmer winters in the upper Midwest, microplastics in our water. What can any one person do? Our best hope for saving the planet and ourselves is through the power of we. Get to the 9th annual One Earth Film Festival, the Midwest's premier environmental film festival, March 6th through the 15th. 26 films, 48 events, 4 counties engaged with filmmakers and experts. Venues include Tesla Gold Coast, Loyola University, Plant Chicago, Old St. Patrick's Church, the Chicago Cultural Center, Lake Theater in Oak Park, and much more. Go to oneearthfilmfest.org. One more time, oneearthfilmfest.org.
Hey, welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Lenny from The Reader, the pride and joy of Indivisible Chicago, is here to introduce our next guest. Before we bring Lenny on, D, you got an update?
Absolutely, I do. Shout out to CapitalFacts.com and the meanest Illinois political bulldog in the yard, Rich Miller.
What do you do now?
Well, first off, it's hilarious. At the top of CapitalFacts.com, a Bloomberg ad.
Hey, Mike, I said it already. Her name is Lenny. Give her a call. We'll take your money.
All right. So Rod Blagojevich, former Illinois governor, has been out of prison for what? Not even 48 hours, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's 48 hours.
Not even 48 hours in, and he's already starting beef with our current governor. The following comes from Capital Facts here, and NBC5. Carol Maureen caught up with Rod Blagojevich, the brother of the former governor.
Robert.
Mm-hmm. Shame on J.B. Pritzker for not being a friend and for not being an honorable person. He wanted something from my brother, and when he didn't get it, now he's moved on, and he's now bitter against my brother.
I don't think he's bitter. I don't think that's the right word that accurately summarizes. I think cynical. Yes, absolutely. Everybody was calling up Rod Blagojevich, who was the governor, and Rahm Emanuel was one of them. They were looking for something for him. He's the governor. He had something to give. He had nominations. He could fill a vacancy.
And hey, Mama Blagojevich, can we get a different name? Rob and Rod, too similar. It confused me while I was reading this. Like, wait, oh, no, Rob.
Yeah.
And then there's Rod.
So bitter is not the word. Cynical is the word.
Yeah,
not that that's any better.
It says here, Rod Blagojevich's brother told NBC5 yesterday, you were his friend and you wanted the Senate seat, and now you're not his friend. And what's your reaction to that? He says it's not a big deal, but Pritzker didn't want the Senate seat. He wanted to be appointed treasurer And it says here, yeah, that's all we got there.
It wasn't. They weren't friends. They weren't like on play dates. They didn't go to the park and play catch. That's a friend, okay? Dennis is my friend. That's a friend.
Man, that
okay?
was nice. You're my friend, too.
They're not friends. It's political alliances. They're wheeling and dealing. Come on, Rob Blagojevich.
And hey, I just want to remind everybody right now at chicago.suntimes.com, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you download your favorite podcast, it's the latest edition of Ben Joravsky Beyond the Column, where we take a deep dive in this week's column from Ben Joravsky, all about Michael Bloomberg.
The wit and wisdom of Michael Bloomberg.
How apropos. So,
wait, hold on, D. I've just been pitching for his money, and I just realized I wrote a very critical column about him, Lenny. Oops. I take it all back.
That's never happened before, huh, Ben? No. All right, go find that. Go download it. If you read the column, even if you haven't read the column, go check it out. Find out what it's about. And also, we take a deep dive into Ben Joravsky column past. Learn about a column all the way back in 1995. The hair days, Ben calls them. So go check it out wherever you download podcasts, Chicago Reader, Chicago Sun-Times website.
Our next guest just was 1 year out of Whitney Young High School back in 1995. So think about that, everybody.
correct.
How old I am. Been right at this for a long time. All right, Lenny, before we introduce our next guest, talk about the latest from Indivisible Chicago.
Yeah, well, before that, really, seriously, I am from the Chicago Reader, LENI, at chicagoreader.com. So support independent news media and the Chicago Reader. And give me a call if you want to advertise on the Ben Joravsky Show or in print or in social media or online or digital. So give me a call. So Indivisible, so we are part of the Indivisible grassroots movement, and we've been here since 2016. A lot of us stepped up, after the women's marches, and there's a lot going on. So 3 things that we're doing this year is we are holding the House, we're flipping the Senate, and we're going to fire Donald Trump. But we know that local races matter. So, for instance, yesterday we were at the Cook County office for an early vote rally for Kim Foxx. We need to get her elected. We're also endorsing Marie Newman in the 3rd District. In case you missed it, we were there on Monday in Dan Lipinski's district in front of his office on the 17th, and we got coverage from Fox, WG, and NBC about our day of action there. We were demanding that Dan Lipinski donate nearly $60,000 in contributions from Mayor Jeff Tobolsky, the Asphalt King Michael Vondra, Exelon, and others caught up in the federal corruption probe to donate his dark money back to an ethical group that's working towards bettering the 3rd District. So I'll just stop there. We're also looking forward to other Indivisible events, such as the one that's coming up that's on the Monday, February 24th. That's at the Second Presbyterian Church. That's 1936 South Michigan. It's a candidates forum, and you've had many of these on your show. Anthony Clark, Keena Collins, Danny Davis, Christine Schombacher. That's Monday, February 24th from 7 to 9. The moderator is going to be League of Women Voters and Indivisible groups, including Indivisible Printers Row. South Loop Neighbors, Greater South Loop Association will co-sponsor the event. Early voting has started in Illinois. If you don't know where to go to elections.il.gov to figure out exactly where your polling place is and where to go. You could find your sample ballot at Ballotopedia or the League of Women Voters. You know that judges are really important right now in our 9th District Illinois, Indivisible Illinois 9th District group. Just today, we had our committee person, Carol Ronan, there, who introduced 2 candidates, Brad Trowbridge in the 8th Sub-Circuit, and also Jill Rose Quinn. If Jill Rose Quinn gets elected, she would be the first openly trans elected official in Illinois. So check that out. You can go to chicagocouncil.org to find out the state judicial evaluations because there are a lot on the ballot.
It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming sometimes.
It is overwhelming sometimes, which is the reason why we want to point to it. And we know that representation matters. People are talking about Bloomberg and his 2019 comment about he, she, or it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a thing. But I will take your money. Lenny
said
at
that.
ChicagoReader.com.
Wait, one more time. Lenny, where?
Lenny at ChicagoReader.com.
All right, Bloomberg. Come on, huh?
So I'm happy to be here today
Mm-hmm.
to talk to an indivisible leader from Naperville.
All right, indivisible leader from Naperville. Are you going to introduce her, Lenny?
Well, you.
Oh, I say,
you do it.
Denika McMillen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And so you are running, we'll start off with the lead. You are running for state representative. What is the district?
District 41.
District 41. And give people a rough sense of where District 41 is, what towns it includes, that kind of thing.
Okay. So it's the western suburbs, Naperville, Warrenville, and pretty sure a little bit of Bolingbrook.
All right. And the incumbent is?
Grant Worley.
And Grant Worley is a Republican, person of the Republican persuasion. Am I correct on that?
This is correct.
All right. And is he a person of the, I would say, Trumpian, right-wing Republican persuasion?
Yes.
All right. So there you go, folks. That's who she's up against. You're running in Naperville. You're running in the 41st Legislative District. But before you got to Naperville, before you got to the 41st Legislative District, you had a life and an existence. So to introduce people to you, Denika McMillen, tell folks like where you're from, where you grew up, that kind of thing.
Well, I am originally from Chicago, born and raised on the west side of Chicago. Actually, the first generation in my family born in Chicago because my family's from Mississippi. And were sharecroppers before they came here. So went to Whitney Young High School, graduated in 94. We have quite a few 94 graduates that stick out. Kenneth Polk, who owns Berries and Batters, that restaurant.
On Lincoln Avenue?
Is it Lincoln? Yeah.
Yes. I've been there. He's a Whitney Young grad?
94, yes. His birthday is today, actually. Michael Scott. The Alderman
Michael Scott, son of, it's Michael Scott Jr., but whatever. He was class of 90. Okay, sorry. I didn't know he was 94, huh? God damn, am I old? Go ahead, Denika.
Also, the show Southside, that's on Comedy Central. Bashir, he graduated in 94 from Whitney Young. The South Side is a show that talks about living on the South Side of Chicago and deals with, I think it's like a, what do you call it? Like a rent-a-center type of show. As well as women who have graduated in 94. Maisha Wynn, she's the one who had this transformation. She was overweight, and now it's called In It to Win It, I think, or something like that. And so, yeah, there's other people, but those are the ones.
I just a tangent within a tangent, but I have to share this with you. So all those years, whenever I go to O'Hare and I get my luggage and you go down that People's Mover, and the people, you guys both looking at me like I'm crazy, but there's a People's Mover in O'Hare, and I think it's, you already have your luggage, and I think it's the People's Mover that takes you to where the trains are. All right. So do you know what I'm talking about? In the basement of, anyway, the mural on the wall that the People Movers take you by is a picture scenes of Chicago. And I look at it every time I'm at O'Hare. I fly out of O'Hare maybe twice a year. And so it's Whitney Young, class of 95, I want to say. So I don't know if you were one of the young artist scholars who painted that. No, I'm not. I mean, but there's a young kid in those days, but now he's a young man. Well, he's not that young, but to me, he's young. He's a teacher, but he was an official with the Chicago Teachers Union, Jackson Potter. And I always see Jackson's name up there, and I'm like, oh my God, I could just imagine young Jackson Potter and these Whitney Young kids, back in 1994 with their art teacher painting this mural. Anyway, so that's my, you just said we just started talking about the Whitney Young class of 94. That's what flashed on, that People Mover going through. But you were not one of them, huh?
Not 94. I mean, not 95, and plus I'm not an artist.
Okay. All right, but you are running for office now. What's your background before you got here, after you graduated from high school, et cetera?
So I went to U of I and got my bachelor's degree in psychology, minor in women's studies. Then I went to University of Michigan and got a master's degree in social work. And basically since that time, I've been a social worker. So over 20 years of social work, and that's encompassed working with the homeless population, working with women and children in shelters, working with women and children infected or affected by HIV and AIDS. I think I've done just about everything. I've worked in CHA housing, a part of the Family Works program where they first tried to introduce mental health services to the residents who were living in the building during the transformation. I've worked
mean when they were moving people out of the CHA housing and tearing down the housing?
Yes.
I did not realize this. The CHA actually provided some kind of counseling, some kind of therapy, so people could deal with the changes in their lives?
It was something like that. Before, it was called the Service Connector Program, and then Family Works was a combination of having mental health services, residential, and then employment.
Mm-hmm.
So they were trying to, I think, create some kind of basis for people to move forward in life. But you have to really think that people living in public housing, just basically anywhere, but especially in public housing, all the violence that people saw and how that affects them. And so then we talk about substance abuse and why are people doing this? If you've seen some of the horrors that people have gone through, or kids walking to school and seeing people dead on the street, this is why people do that. It's a coping mechanism. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily the best one, but it's something to try to help them continue on.
Denika, this is one of my favorite themes and subjects, if you will, and feel free to disagree with me about what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. Life is tough, man. Every one of us is going through all issues. Obviously, some people have it far worse than others, okay?
Yes.
I do not put myself at the top of the list of people who have it bad, but we all deal with stuff. We all need help and assistance of some kind. But there's this notion that, we don't talk about it. It's a private thing. So if you have money, you go pay for your private counselor, you go pay for your private social worker, and you don't talk about it, you just go do your thing. So if you don't have money and you can't afford it, then you have to appeal to the government. But it seems like the government's attitude is like, this doesn't exist. Do you follow what I'm saying? So there's never any strong push for expanded mental health care for poor people. And then when there's just like a shooting or something, the Republicans will, when it gets to the issue of guns, they'll say, well, the issue is not guns, the issue is mental health. The person was mentally unstable. And that drops it because they don't take the next step and say, oh, we're going to provide more money for social clinics or anything. So it just always, I've lived through this all these years in the city of Chicago where Ron was closing the clinics when he first got in and patting himself on the back as being a great reformer and saving money and not even thinking of the consequences of people on the street. I think this is a serious problem in our country right now. Everything I just said about the attitude about mental health services and our reluctance, our resistance, if you will, to funding mental health care for the poor. Do you agree with me?
Yeah. People try to ignore it or make it seem like it's a bad thing. It's an everyday thing. When it comes to mental health disorders, anxiety is actually at the top. But people don't talk about, oh, you're just worried. But people actually have physical symptoms from anxiety. They have panic attacks. You have people going into hospitals thinking that they're having heart attacks when it's really just a panic attack that's really sitting them there. And so unless they get that addressed, it's going to continue to happen. And, one of the best things for mental health treatment is therapy as well as medication. Those two together work well.
So how did you move from your career as a therapist doing so much work in the city of Chicago to a resident of DuPage County where you're now running for state rep?
Well, I have kids, and I have a daughter who's almost 12, and then I have twin boys, and it was paying basically a mortgage to send the twin boys to preschool. So we're like, okay, when they get older, we're gonna have to go someplace where there's a good education as well as it's free in some way. So we actually just landed in Naperville in June of 2016. It wasn't our plan at all, but we were there. And one thing about me is whenever I go somewhere, I try to see what's going on and be active. And, of course, that was an election year and all that stuff happened. My kids were heavily involved in the election. They watched the debates with us. They watched the convention. So they were like really into it.
How old are your kids?
Well, then,
Yeah.
6 and 8.
6-year-old watching it. Well, okay.
Well, last night, one of them wanted to watch the debate with me, but he had to go to sleep.
No. Too bad. I feel for that. What's with the 10, 12 by now? Is that how old the kid is? What?
No, the twins are 9.
Oh, okay. So the 9-year-old wanted to stay. Well, I feel sorry for the 9-year-old who, boy or girl. You missed a good one last night.
Oh, yeah.
That was a heck of a debate. And so you moved out to Naperville.
Mm-hmm.
And do you work in the city? Do you have to commute into the city?
So I was working in the city, and then what I did was I started working part-time in a private practice in Oak Park.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I just opened my own practice in Bolingbrook. So that's basically what I've been doing. As far as my involvement in DuPage County, someone told me about, there's this Parent Diversity Council. You should go to this meeting. So since that time, I had been involved with the Naperville District 203 Parent Diversity Advisory Council. And then from there, heard about Indivisible. And then it was just different things that just kept coming up. And I was interested in it because basically my whole life, I've always wanted to work with people and people who didn't necessarily have everything that they needed. Not necessarily wanted, but needed. And the different organizations, they were welcoming. And so I went and I actually found out about there's precinct committee people. In Chicago, I don't know if they exist, but that was my first time hearing about that.
Precinct captains, they call them in Chicago.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And so I joined the precinct. I joined the township, and then, talking about that, I said, hey, I wouldn't mind doing that. And there was not one in my district. So I was basically appointed. And I don't think there has ever been a Democratic precinct committee person in that district.
So you're the person that goes door to door on behalf of Democratic candidates?
Yes.
Did you do that in 2018 cycle?
Yes.
So who were some of the candidates you went door to door for in 2018? Do you remember?
Yeah, but I'm only going to name the winners.
Okay. I want a name for the winners in the world. No, they got a name for the winners in the world. I want a name for the losers. Anyway, sorry, went back in time for songs. All right, so who are some of the winners?
Lauren Underwood in 2018. Yeah, I did a lot of work with her, and a little bit with Sean Caston. Yeah. And I don't think we had anything to really worry about with Bill Foster. So yeah, but that's also the time that I actually decided that I was going to probably step into politics was the election of 2018.
Now, what was it about 2018 that motivated you to step into politics?
Well, back in probably August of 2018, there was a candidate who was running as a Democratic nominee, or the candidate, and something happened where she's redistricted, and she basically had to drop out of the race. So we did not have a Democratic nominee to go against the incumbent who had actually brought this up. Like 6 weeks before the election, somehow she was not in the district, something to do with, I don't know, I don't know what happened. Mm-hmm. But the thing was that if she had won, they wanted to have someone to go in her spot. And at that time, because I knew I lived in the district, I said, I'll do it. She ended up losing by like 4 points. Mm-hmm. But I mean, that was something that ignited this in my head, because before I never thought about going into politics. But to see that injustice happen made me want to go and fight against it.
So this was a Democratic candidate who got bounced off the ballot. Am I understanding this story correctly?
Yes.
And her eligibility was challenged, and she was kicked off the ballot, and so there was no candidate running again. Is that what you're saying? I'm trying to make sure I'm understanding the story correctly.
Yeah, there was no time to put another person in there, I don't think so.
And so who was the beneficiary of this? Who was victorious?
The incumbent now, Grant Worley.
So you said this is never going to happen again. From here on out, Grant Worley is going to have an opposition.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't think he had opposition in a while, and I don't think that people were taking this candidate as serious as they should have been. And when it got toward the end, they were seeing that there was this drive for change in Naperville. It's not the same Naperville that it used to be. There's a lot more diversity in Naperville. There's a lot more working families. These $1 million homes or millionaires, that stuff exists, but that's not all of Naperville. There are people who work 2 to 3 jobs trying to make sure that they can continue to support their families and make sure that their kids get a good education.
Now, Denika, you've been going door to door. What's people's response when you tell them you're running for state rep?
It's been pretty good, especially when I say I'm a social worker, because just the meaning of being a social worker. Ethics is a really big thing for me. I always say that, I'm in a profession where I don't make a lot of money, so I've never expected to make a lot of money. So it's kind of joking, but no one can really bribe me because I'm used to not having money anyway. So, but no, it's about making sure that the people who don't have voices are being heard. In my work in social work, I've listened to a lot of people, I've talked with a lot of people, and I've gotten an idea of what they want, what they need. We talk about taxes, all the time in Naperville. The taxes are so high, and, it's going towards the schools. And yes, the state should be paying more to support the schools, but that's just not going to happen right now. And so this is where we are right now. The taxes are high. Our kids are getting the best education in the state. So it's like, which one do you want? Do you want to keep your money and not give your kids education?
Wow, and some honesty from a politician. That's not going to get you a lot of votes.
Oh, well.
And fair tax. We were talking with Don Villar when you were on deck. I don't know if you were hearing us, if you were in the room at the time, about the fair tax. That, of course, would be it's going to be on the ballot in November. It takes 60% to pass. It would raise the rates on the highest earners in the state of Illinois, bring in more money to fund government to pay our obligations, and be more progressive. The more money you make, the higher rate you pay. What's your position on the fair tax?
I support it. I want it to pass. Nothing has worked so far. And if this is a new idea and it looks like it's working probably in other states, nobody is going broke. And for people to actually have to pay the same tax as people who are millionaires, that's ridiculous.
Unfair.
Yeah.
They were getting at that in last night's presidential debate, which, that gets me to this subject. Whenever I have a state rep candidate or state senate candidate or an alderman candidate here in Chicago, I ask, well, who do you support? And generally they tell me, well, Ben, I get supporters of all the different candidates, so I really don't want to tell people who I'm supporting because I don't want to alienate any candidate. Fair enough. Okay, you got to win. So what then I do, Denika, is I ask them to take the Ben challenge. So I've already taken it myself on the show. I'll do it again.
Okay.
Your 3 top, if you could rank them like it's a college football ranking. And Denika's like, oh, Ben, no, she's already resisting. I'm going to make Lenny do the same thing. So my top 3 at the moment.
Okay, so top 3, not necessarily in any kind of particular order.
Okay, you don't even have to do in any particular order. There we go. Good. Fair enough. Lenny's like, you're going to do it too, okay? So your top 3, go.
Warren, Sanders, Biden.
Wow, same with me. Those are my top 3. Now, if I had to rank them, which I will do, I will personally rank them. My number 1 is Bernie, but Elizabeth Warren, after last night, Denika, she's knocking on the door. She killed it last night in that debate. And I love seeing it because I've been disappointed with her campaign over the last month or so, particularly that last debate where she went after Bernie about their conversation that they allegedly had, private conversation, whatever. But last night, she killed it. So she's not going to, come on. Joe Biden's, I can't hate on Joe Biden like my millennial friends hate on him so much, but he's just a product of the Democratic Party. You know what I'm saying, Denika? I mean, that's just, he's a Dem. So,
yeah.
Look,
But
Denika,
I watched it last night, and I think that was my first time actually watching it basically all the way through because I had a headache and I just laid down and watched it. But I just kept feeling like it was WrestleMania.
Yeah.
You know, like people, you didn't know who was going to join the cage next and who was going to get attacked next. So I thought it was fun. It was just a whole bunch of like oohs and ahs and, you know, I enjoyed it.
No, I'm with you. And, you know, many of my centrist friends are always telling me, Ben, you know, you can't be too critical. Party has to be together. We can't criticize each other. And I believe there's fair criticism in a debate and unfair criticism in a debate. And so, I mean, there's a lot of subjectivity, Denika, in saying fair and unfair because the things that I tend to think are unfair are the ones that I think are unfair to Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I guess the Michael Bloombergs of the world would say, well, that, you know, you're unfair to us too. But for instance, when people report, like that question, the way that was handled a couple debates ago about the private conversation between Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, I mean, only two people know what was said in that conversation, you know what I'm saying? So for everybody to draw conclusions about it, this is a little unfair. That was just my opinion. I didn't think it's unfair for Elizabeth Warren to go hard at Michael Bloomberg for quotes and positions that he had. Those are quotes and positions he has.
Right.
He has to defend them at some point.
And then I have to wonder, would a man have said that to him? I think it had to come from a woman.
About
his comments about women.
Yeah.
I don't think a man would have said, you've called women this. A woman had to say that.
Yeah. Do you realize that there was a comparable moment? I don't know if you were paying attention to the 2016 Republican debates. Danika's like, no, I have a life, Ben. I was paying attention back in 2016. And this actually was in the movie Bombshell. Did you see Bombshell?
No.
You see Bombshell?
No, I haven't.
Oh, Ron Don't Walk. It's a good flick. It was Trump was asked. It was, who asked him? It was a newscaster on Fox. I can't believe I'm blanking on the newscaster's name. Asked him point blank and did what Elizabeth Warren. She ran down the list of all the nasty things.
Oh, it was a woman.
Yes. Help me, man.
A woman from Fox?
Yeah, but I can't believe I can't remember her name.
She had blonde hair.
Yeah. Well, that's really ridiculous. Danika thinks she's slick. Well, we really
was cool, man. Laura Ingraham?
No. Come on, it was Megyn Kelly. Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, and so Trump's response after she ran down this list of all these awful things he said, because, well, I only said that about Rosie O'Donnell. That's how Trump handled it, and that'll work in the Republican primary. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's not going to get you many votes with that response in a Democratic primary.
Right.
So how'd you think Bloomberg handled it?
I don't know if he did.
Right.
She just went in, and you know, what can you say?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you what I thought. He handled it terribly. I'm going to give you advice, Michael Bloomberg. You got to work on that one. You got to think about a better response, Lenny. His basic response was, well, when it got down to it, when she asked him the follow-up question having to do with the non-disclosure agreements, his basic response, well, they were probably reacting to a bad joke. And people were literally groaning when he said that. See, that's not going to work in a Democratic primary. That may work in a Republican primary. Do you follow me?
That's why he's in the wrong race.
Or the wrong party.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. People are saying he spent so much money to get his ass whooped.
Yeah. Well, you know, there's another debate. You know, he live and learn. Maybe he can learn from last night's whooping and come back stronger.
We can spend that money to kind of cancel our school debt. I take that.
There are more productive uses of that money, absolutely, than giving it, spending on this campaign. Unless, you know, he rebounds and shows us a little something. Lenny's looking at me like, no way, Ben. But, you know, hey, you know, maybe he learned from yesterday's encounter. Denika, tell folks some of the big issues you're pushing for in your campaign, some of the things you're championing.
Well, obviously mental health. I feel like it's lacking. You mentioned earlier about like Medicaid and the people who need it the most. It's really hard to actually kind of see some of those people because of the way the system is made up, that you have to jump through so many hoops to get paneled with them. So I'm actually not able to see people with Medicaid. The only time I was able to do that was when I was working in hospital systems. But even within those systems, they only took a certain amount. They wanted to deal with people who had regular insurance as opposed to Medicaid and Medicare because of the delays in the pay. I don't know. But yeah, definitely mental health, substance abuse, which goes along with mental health. You know, a lot of people think that it's a separate issue, but I don't know anybody who is a kid and says, I want to grow up and be a pothead. You know, like there's something that drives somebody. Not that pot is bad. I support marijuana.
Yeah, everybody looks at that.
These are people who well, anyway. Yeah. You know, the opioid crisis. There you go. But yeah, you know, those things are tied together, and I feel like you have to deal with. There's not necessarily a substance abuse issue with someone who has mental health, but I think that if there's a substance abuse issue, it might be a mental health issue as well. So that's why I kind of group those together. Also, the CEJA bill that's down in Springfield, the Clean Energy Jobs Act, which can create more jobs, but also get us closer to our renewable energy goals. You know, a lot of people don't talk about the environment, and sometimes you don't have to talk about it before you see it. You know, think about how we've been having the hottest years. Every summer is the hottest summer within the last 8 to 10 years. You know, and then last year, I think in Mexico they got some snow, and then in Canada they had a heat wave. So I'm just like, you know, the earth is trying to tell us something. Maybe we should listen. And then, of course, you know, the Fair Tax Amendment. But, you know, as I've walked through Naperville, and Naperville actually has a lot of homes where the original owners are there. You know, it used to be farms out there. And so I'm talking to some of the seniors, and they talk about how they feel disconnected. You know, how can we help them? Or how can we connect them to services that might be beneficial for them? So, yeah, I mean, I'm about the people, and, you know, people who don't necessarily have as much power.
Denika, how can people get in touch with you? What's email, website, whatever? Go.
Website is McMillen, McMillen, 4, U, the letter U.com. I'm on Facebook, Denika McMillen. The one where it has my picture that is political. I have a couple Facebook accounts. And then email is Denika, Denika, at McMillen4U.com.
All right, very good. Denika McMillen, thank you so much for coming in. And Lenny, any last minute thoughts?
Yeah, we can't let her off the hook. She's got to pick her 3 candidates.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't she already pick her?
No, she
Lenny!
didn't.
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
You're welcome.
You know, I'm for Warren Sanders.
And?
I would have to say Biden, you know.
Yeah. Joey's coming back.
He wasn't really present at the debate last.
He was more present than he's been in past debates. And you know what, Lenny? I have a lot of lefties come through this show, and for the longest time they were bashing Biden, because they were Bernie or Elizabeth Warren supporters, and Biden was the centrist in their way. Now they're bashing Bloomberg because they don't view Biden as. But they always gave me a hard time when I would, because I always had this strange. I mean, I'm going to not even take the word strange. I've always kind of liked Joe Biden. You know, he's to the right of me, but I've been following his career since the 70s, man. And so anyway, so now it's interesting because Bloomberg's in the race. A lot of people, and Yang's not in the race. A lot of people would have Yang as third. I had Yang third for a long time, Denika. So anyway, Biden, I'm watching rise in the polls among my lefty friends. Interesting phenomenon.
Right. But there are still a lot of my moderate friends who are really into Pete. So I think to myself, if I had a choice between Pete and Biden, I'd go
Yes, me too. Pete's too young to be so conservative. Like, this is the question I asked him last night. You know, are you pretty... Just my attitude about a 38-year-old, I think he's 38 now, who's so moderate. I don't know. Like, when you're young, that's when you should be idealistic. You know, Pete's already 38-year-old, talks like he's 90. She can't get that, so don't even ask for that.
Right.
So it's like... I like Bernie. Bernie's pushing 80, and his heart is big, you know, and he wants to change the world in a positive way. Pete's 38 years old. He's already given up. Don't ask for too much. You know, you're not going to get it anyway, and settle for less. I have trouble with a young conservative. Are you old enough to remember that TV show? Michael Fox played the young son. His parents were all hippies.
Yeah.
And Michael was the conservative.
Family Ties.
Family Ties, yeah.
God damn, he knows his stuff.
Hey, watch your language.
He knows his...
I was close.
You were close. But, you know, to me, he reminds me of Alex. That's his name.
Alex P. Keaton.
Denika and Dennis, DD. So anyway, Mayor Pete reminds me of Alex Keaton. You know what I'm saying? That's just me, Lenny. So anyway,
wait, let me look. Oh, all the millennials stopped listening.
Those millennials love Family Ties. Who are you kidding? Well, I love that show, and you know. So, any closing thoughts you want to make?
Well, just to remind everybody that the Reader comes out every Thursday in print. So here's a new one.
Mm-hmm.
And then also there's a weekly activist calendar. Karen Goldman was on the show a couple weeks ago. Persistlist.org. You can submit all of your events into there. And just to remind you that this Monday, February 24th, at the Second Presbyterian Church, 1936 South Michigan Avenue. That's when the Illinois 7th Congressional District Candidates Forum is going to happen with Anthony Clark, Keena Collins, Danny Davis, and Christine Schombucker. And also early voting has started, so a lot of people have already voted that I know. I think it's amazing, but check out elections.il.gov, no matter where you are in Illinois, to find out where your polling place is. And one more thing is Super Tuesday at Promontory with Ben Joravsky.
Oh my God, how can I forget that? And Maya, man, we're going to have such a great time. Jeanette Taylor will be there. Del Marie Cobb will be there. And Maya and I will be there, and we'll be following that's going to be so pivotal. Denika, March 3rd, Super Tuesday. We'll see how strong Bloomberg is. We'll see who's going to be who's winning over the black vote. We've been waiting for that. All these white states, now we got them out of the way. We can see which way the black vote's going. We've been talking about this forever on this show. Mm-hmm. I'm so excited about that March 3rd Promontory show.
It's 5311 South Lake Park Avenue West. Yeah, it's going to be a good time.
Yes, so I'm really looking forward to that, and can't wait for that.
Is it free?
I believe it's FREE, free.
Free 99.
That's correct.
By the way, Lenny, I didn't tell you this. In honor of my beloved Reader, I've been writing for the Reader since 1984. A long time. I wore my Reader T-shirt today.
My God.
Okay. Whenever Lenny comes in, I try to wear my Reader T-shirt. So anyway, I love the Reader. All right, Lenny, thank you so much. Denika McMillen, thank you very much. What a show. Don Villar earlier in the show. And Branko March Teach. How's that?
That was
D?
good. That was it.
Man, Branko was good. We're going to have to bring him back. Miles, just saying. No, I'm just kidding, Miles. We love you. Enjoy your vacation in New Orleans. But it was great to have Branko sitting in. Great show. A lot of political talk. Of course, we couldn't have done any of it without the man, the myth, the legend behind.
And hey, I'll have you know I haven't smoked weed in 4 days.
Okay. Wow.
Huh?
It's because he doesn't have any. So that's why we say any guest, give the man some lead. Anyway, the pride and joy of Alton, Illinois. And as Denika can tell you, back home in Alton, they call him White Lightning. Give yourself a raise, take it out of petty cash. See you tomorrow, everybody.
Hey, and remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows and Benny J bonus interviews at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites and wherever else you download your favorite podcast. Be sure to check out our brand new podcast that we call Beyond the Column, where we take a deep dive in Ben Joravsky's latest column all about Michael Bloomberg and learn about a column from Ben Joravsky past. Hey, downloaders, you know we live stream this show, right? It's true. Tuesdays through Fridays, 1 until 3 p.m. Central Time at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites. and the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel. When you join us on the Sun-Times YouTube channel, you can check out the live stream chat. Join it. Hang out with Jay Marie, Kyle, Brianna, Steve. Wait, where's Steven been? Steven, are you listening? Join them all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Big problems become big problems when you let small problems sit.
That's correct.